Good afternoon, everyone. I will call to order this regular meeting of the Public Safety, Civil Rights, and Emergency Management Committee today, which is March 19th, 2014. I am Councilmember Blong Yang, Chair of this committee. With me today are the following council members. Councilmembers Cam Gordon, Council President Barbara Johnson, Councilmember Lene Palmisano. We may shortly be joined by Councilmember Warsame, who is not here yet. But Councilmember Kevin Reich will be unable to attend today as he is attending to other city business. We have 4 items on our agenda, and the first item listed on the agenda is Charter Department Head Reappointments, and this is to consider the following reappointments by the Executive Committee for 2-year terms beginning January 2nd, 2014. First one is John Friedel to be appointed to the position of Fire Chief, and the second is Velma Corbil to the appointed position of Civil Rights Director. The second item is department overviews, and both of these were postponed from February 26, 2014 committee meeting, and the first would be 911, the second being emergency management, but I'm going to switch this around so that the first item actually on the agenda would be the discussion items related to 911 and then emergency management. And within that even, we're going to switch it around to have emergency management present first and then have 911 present second. And should I make a motion for that, or should we just go with it? Okay.
If nobody objects, it's your call.
Okay. Council members, any objections to that? Okay. All right, so the first person to be up would be Director of Office of Emergency Management, Barrett Lane. And Mr. Lane, will you step up and introduce yourself and then do your presentation? Your presentation is for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We'll get the computer booted up here and we'll get underway.
Thank you. I won't start your time yet then.
With your permission, Mr. Chair, we will postpone the Windows 7 upgrades for the purposes of today's presentation.
That's allowed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Barrett Lane. I'm the Emergency Management Director, and I'm here this morning to brief you, or this afternoon to brief you, on staffing levels in the Emergency Management Department. We've got a 5-minute presentation for you, and we'll go through that in relatively short order here. We start out our staffing analysis with our vision and our mission. Our vision is a resilient City of Minneapolis government serving a resilient City of Minneapolis community. And in order to achieve that vision, we have a mission statement that's up on the board. But basically, we work in the 4 traditional areas of emergency management: mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. And what we do in those areas is build capability. We build capabilities in order to generate that vision we have of resilience. So to the extent that buying insurance is a capability, we have insurance programs, things like that. We want to make sure that our program is flexible, that it's tuned to our risk pattern here, but also is flexible enough to respond to whatever comes down the pike on an all hazards basis. How do we accomplish that strategy? How do we fulfill that mission? We have adopted a strategy that basically takes into account our mission, our vision, as well as our organizational mandates. We're required by state law, by our ordinances, by federal law to do certain functions. We've put that into the mix as well. And of course, we're aligned with the present city goals, and we'll realign with future city goals. The strategy then is to use our basic strategy of moving forward against that vision is to adopt NFPA 1600, which is the national standard for emergency management and business continuity organizations. The reason we're using that strategy is it gives us kind of a peg of objective measures to hit and a list to assess ourselves today and into the future. So as we build out this organization, we know we're covering our bases, we know we're in line with the state and national standards, and we can, of course, be flexible enough to respond on an all-hazards basis. The idea is over the next 5 years to move toward accreditation. So what we did is use that NFPA 1600 standard then to assess our staffing needs. If these are the things that we need to accomplish in the next 5 years, what are the competencies, skills, abilities, and knowledge we need to bring on board in order to make that happen? So we've worked with HR to scope that out, develop a tight team of people that will be able to be responsive to that mission and that vision. Basically, we're going to deliver those NFPA capabilities with this core staff, right now scoped to be about 6 people. That's the people who work day in and day out within emergency management itself to build and maintain the capabilities that we're charged with. And really those things fall into the 4 buckets that are outlined under functions: operations, planning, logistics, finance, and administration. Now, while we haven't developed the basic framework or the exact business job descriptions yet, we're working with HR right now to do that. They will generally fall into an org chart that looks like this. We'll have about 6 people, and they will be working in the areas I just outlined: operations, planning, logistics, finance, and administration. To build the job descriptions, we have to mix that up a little bit, but that's what we're working with HR right now to do. So that's that core staff that we have available on an ongoing basis. Resource-wise, we can meet that between our federal grants and our general fund allocation. We can cover the 6 positions. Now, just to be clear, there are 2 positions that are filled now. We'll be filling 4 over the course of the next few months. So that's where we are with, from a staffing standpoint. I just wanted to flag there that we, to the extent we are relying on grant resources, we have to watch that into the future to make sure that that doesn't develop into a gap at some point in time. But the grants we're working with right now seem relatively stable for the near future. We hope to get this done by late spring, early summer, and be staffed up and ready to go. The other piece of staffing you should be aware of is this idea of contingent staffing, and that's how we can staff the Emergency Operations Center. Obviously, it takes more than 6 people to do that. Certainly, when you're working operational period after operational period, we need to rely on other people within the organization and outside to be brought in to help staff that, and we're working to build up that process and routinize that and bring it into the institution here as well. So this is a process that we'll be working on again, with HR and the other departments over the course of the next 12 to 18 months. So we should have that accomplished as well. So with that, Mr. Chair, members of the council, I can stand for any questions, but at this point in time, in summary, we're in reasonably good shape from a resources standpoint. We're working with HR to get that core staff identified and brought on board, and we have plans in place to bring that contingent workforce in if and as necessary until we get the final plan developed.
Thank you. You were within your 5 minutes. Nice work. Any committee members have any questions or comments? President Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Lane, so I was listening in your first remarks, and I just wonder how many of our the times that we've activated the emergency management system have fallen within what you called kind of our core more predictable emergencies, and I think about weather and that kind of thing, and what have fallen outside of what?
Yeah, our risk pattern basically is weather related. So
Yeah.
it's the ice storms, it's the snowstorms, it's
Heat.
the tornadoes,
Yeah.
and obviously we've had tornadoes.
Yeah.
Those are the things that we're working on to anticipate. To some extent, flooding. And we work with other organizations across the state, so we have to be responsive to things that happen regionally as well as just within the city. But it's primarily weather. It's backing up major hazmat incidents. Certainly, if there's an act of terrorism, something intentional, we would have to do that. That's not something that we can assess on an ongoing basis. I think the thing that really fell out of the pattern was really the bridge collapse.
Yeah.
As it's been said in the past, we didn't have a bridge collapse plan, but what we need to have is a general plan that's flexible enough to respond to things that do in fact come out of the blue like that.
Mr. Chair, just another What about health emergencies? How have we? I was trying to think back if we've had. We did that test of the postal carriers delivering a medication, I think, to homes. Have we had any health emergencies, or I suppose some of the weather-related stuff, the heat and that kind of thing?
It was before I was retained, 2 years ago, but I believe, and Tony Hauser is here, we did mount an operation on H1N1. I think that was the most recent one that we've looked at.
All right.
But there are other things that we've done since then. We usually ramp up when we have severe heat. Some of the cold weather snaps that we've had, we've been monitoring those to make sure that there aren't public health impacts to that. And obviously with a core staff of 6, we can't do everything. So we really rely on our partners in public health, in police, fire, public works, the county, to get a lot of this work done on a day-to-day basis. So, we're that hub where those different disciplines come together.
Okay. Now, on your, you have 4 FTEs in the general fund. Are you funded for that for 2014?
In the general fund, we're funded for 4. We have 2 open.
Okay.
We have 2 grant money for 2 more. So when that grant program comes through, we'll then come and make sure that we up our FTE count to make that fit with the budget.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Council Member.
Council members, any other questions? Mr. Lane, when you talk about the 4 FTEs that need to be filled, I mean, I know that 2 of them are, the money's there already. I mean, what's your timeline for that?
We should have that done within the next couple of months. It's a matter right now of making sure that the job descriptions are lined up in such a way that we can cover as much of the work we know we need to do and, honestly minimize the footprint that we have on the overall operation here. We don't want to have an enormous request right out of the gate. My hope is that we would run with this for a year or so, see how it goes. If it's too heavy, we can come back and make that adjustment. If it's too light, well, we've got a couple that are in the grant fund, so we can roll those off. So I want to stay flexible here. This current strategy has only been in place for a year, so we don't have a lot of experience about how emergency management as an enterprise-focused, enterprise-serving organization works. So we're kind of feeling our way through this as we go. But I want to staff cautiously because we make commitments to people and bring them on board. I want to make sure that we can, provide well for them as well.
Okay, and a couple of months ago, as I remember it, it was just the 2 of you in the staff, and now you've increased your staff by 1, or did you hire new folks?
Councilmember, no, we haven't hired yet. We're in the process of doing that. So right now we're down to 2.
Okay, just 2, right?
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions?
I will say, however, Councilmember, that we've gotten exceptional help from the county, from the region, and the state as we've been sort of in this transitionary period. So, we sit within a web of resources that we can bring to bear here. So I'm comfortable, in this transitionary period as long as it doesn't last too long. But we do have relationships within the broader emergency management community that we could pull in if we need them right now. So you shouldn't be overly concerned about this. We're in that transition mode, but we've got good partners internally and externally to get us through that.
Okay. Councilmember Palmisano.
Thank you, Chair Yang. Mr. Lane, I understand that so much of the resiliency that we have with emergency management is built on these partnerships. And could you just offer just a short little bit about how do we solidify those partnerships with other municipalities or other kinds of departments? Are there contracts that you've worked on over the last year, or what are those agreements like that gives you that confidence that it's robust?
A lot of the first call for resources, even under our ordinance, has to go internally, and that makes sense. And we've got a lot of depth throughout this organization. Even though it's not related to emergency management particularly, there's a lot of people who have had a good deal of training across the organization. And that's why we want to make sure that we can reorganize that and tap into that as part of this contingent staffing process. So that's our first go-to. So whether it's fire or PD or elsewhere, we know we've got internal resources we can go to. We have been working with Hennepin County on a formal mutual aid, but there really is a state statute under Chapter 12 that allows us to call for and deploy resources without an existing mutual aid agreement. Now, we can vary that if we want to, but we do have the ability to move resources across jurisdictional boundaries just on the background state law. So as I've worked with Eric Wage at Hennepin County, Judd Freed in Ramsey County, Terry Stoltzman in Anoka County, Christy Rollwagon, who's an alumnus, I guess, of the city of Minneapolis, is at the airport. It's those relationships that really found the basis of this. We have a number of regional working groups, both around grants and around operations, and we routinely meet on an ongoing basis to make sure that we're sharing situational awareness, opportunities, exercising and training together. So a lot of it is at that relationships level, but we're, as I said, with Hennepin County in particular, driving forward with more of a formalized plan. But the lack of a formalized plan does not mean that we can't get it done.
Any other questions? Seeing that there are none, I would move to receive and file the reports. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? The motion carries.
Mr. Chair, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is Heather Hunt, the Director of 911. Ms. Hunt, will you step up and introduce yourself?
You want to just be on?
I need to be on something.
I'll get you a second.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, committee members. I'm Heather Hunt. I'm the Director of Emergency Communications for the City of Minneapolis. And I am here today to give you a overview of the 911 department, as well as some updates on some current initiatives that we've been asked to provide to you today.
And Ms. Hunt, could I interrupt you for just a second? I just want to let folks know that we are extending the time for 911 just because of a lot of the issues that have come up. And so the director knows that she has 10 minutes to give this presentation.
Thank you. So our agenda for this 10 minutes will be a department overview and then an update on our workforce cross-training initiative. I have, I don't know if they're in here, but we did bring our 6 new Future of 911 employees here who are in their first week of training, and they're here as part of their employee orientation. So I'd ask you to join me in welcoming them to the city. Thank you. 911's mission is very straightforward. We form the link between the public and the emergency responders. We are a critical department in the city, and we support the entire enterprise in responding to emergencies. This is our org chart. It's just an overview of how the department is currently organized, and we are a city council department. 911 has 82 authorized FTE, that's full-time equivalency staff, for 2014. At the current time, we have 2 vacancies. Our 911 programs are primarily to receive, process, and dispatch requests for emergency response. That includes answering and processing 911 and 10-digit calls for service and dispatching police and fire emergency response. We also perform warnings and notifications throughout the city. We are the secondary warning point for severe weather for the county. We monitor various police systems for emergency response, such as the ShotSpotter gunfire detection system, the BAIT vehicle, anti-auto theft vehicle, and the security cameras that are located throughout the city. And we, in addition, have an administrative support function that supports the department. 911 answers and processes about 565,000 calls for service in a year. Most of those are 911. A portion of those are 10-digit calls, some of which are emergencies, where people can't complete their call using 911, so they use our published 10-digit phone number to reach us. We also dispatch and manage police and fire resources for emergency response. In 2013, we dispatched 374,000 police responses and 38,000 fire responses. All ambulance dispatching is done by two separate private entities, Hennepin County Emergency Medical Service and North Memorial Emergency Medical Services. This is a snapshot of our operating budget. The vast majority of our $8.6 million budget is comprised of salaries and benefits. We receive a small amount of state surcharge funding that is narrowly prescripted in how we spend it. It has to be directly related to providing 911 service delivery. Now I'll move into our 911 updates. And I'll start with our workforce cross-training. The department determined years ago that there were potential efficiencies that should be actively developed. The decision to move forward with cross-training 2 years ago was made to make sure that the department was making the very best possible use of our resources. Here's what we did. We took a studied, long-term approach to implementing this change. Initially, we undertook a pilot project to identify any training issues that might occur. Then we developed a new job description and had it studied by human resources to make sure that it had no disparate impact or other unintended negative consequences on our employees. Then we met with our AFSCME and human resource partners for a series of discussions where we developed and worked through a list of issues for both labor and management. Meanwhile, we were holding a number of employee information and listening sessions to hear what employees had to say and to explain the program to them. Finally, we began incrementally cross-training new and existing staff. This is a high-level overview of our roadmap, and where we are right now is represented by the blue arrow. We're halfway through, or a little more than halfway through our process. Today we have 50 fully cross-trained dispatchers and 18 operators remaining to complete the training over the course of the next 3 years. That's 26% of staff now that is not yet fully cross-trained. Our authorized staff is 68 for dispatchers. We currently have 2 vacancies that will be filled this summer. We also intend to hire additional bell curve positions in anticipation of future retirements. Any performance discussion of 911 or any call center takes into account 3 main factors. Number 1 is staffing, number 2, deployment, and number 3, compliance. All 3 must work together to produce results. It's not just numbers of people. We need to be asking, do we have the right number of staff? Staffing is determined during the budget cycle. While the ultimate decision to fund resources is made at the mayor and council level, departments do make recommendations. In 2012 and 2013 and 2014, we requested additional staff and were granted 4 additional staff to bring us up to 2014. We've been working hard to hire and train and deploy those staff, and also to use the new budget mechanism that was put in place just in 2014 to allow for departments to be more flexible in determining their own staffing needs and budget requirements. When we talk about deployment, and we're going to get to our scheduling initiative here, we talk about deployment. That means that are the staff we have deployed effectively? That speaks to our schedule and the cross-training. We are now using a demand-based staffing model that corresponds to known call volumes. And the cross-training of staff will add additional flexibility in responding to emergencies. And the third factor is compliance. Are those employees present doing their best work when they're on the job? This chart represents our historical call volume activity during the summer and the winter. The blue is summer, and the red is a typical winter call volume pattern. I've heard people say that you can't predict when an emergency will happen. What we do know for sure is that many more emergencies do happen between the hours of 9 a.m. and midnight than happen between midnight and 9 a.m. Given these known patterns, which you can see here, it's just common sense to have the most staff on duty during the busiest hours. The green line that you see is our staffing pattern for 2014 demand-based scheduling initiative. That is the number of staff that the schedule is designed to provide. This is an improvement over more traditional staffing models used in the past, which distributed staff more evenly throughout the day and used overtime to fill the gaps. Now it's the workload that is distributed more evenly among the staff. I've been asked how, since we staff for known historical activity, do we respond to those surges in call volume that can unexpectedly occur? To fully staff every position at all times would be impractical. So we employ tools such as call triaging, just as hospital emergency rooms have done for years. Call takers work quickly through the surge to triage calls, determining which are true emergencies and which can wait. Many times these surges are calls reporting the same incident, and the response has already been started on the very first call. While no 911 center can guarantee every call will be answered immediately by a person, improvements in technology will provide ways to route overflow calls to other locations for answer. Our new phone system, which is planned for early 2015, has this capability. The good news is, and you can see this from the 2014 answer times so far, that our hiring, training, and scheduling initiatives are working. Just in March alone, you can see what the efforts of our leadership and staff have produced. Everything that I have done, from cross-training to staff deployment to focus on compliance, has been in response to the desire to make sure 911 is answered and every emergency response is dispatched as quickly as possible in the city of Minneapolis. Shouldn't every 911 call be answered immediately? Yes, that would certainly be preferable. The entire public safety response system that consists of police, fire, and emergency medical services is based on a series of calculations of coverage done to best minimize risk and make the best use of resources. The system status management used by emergency medical services is an illustration of this. We don't have a fire station on every corner, but resources are strategically deployed for the best possible response. Our workforce cross-training is geared to provide even greater agility in deploying staff to surges in activity.
Ms. Hunt, you should wrap up.
I'll very quickly touch on our technology initiatives going forward. We are partnered with 4 other Phase 1 entities to implement a shared hosted 911 call handling system, which I know this committee is already familiar with. That will give us additional flexibility, not only in our call processing, but in our reporting so that we can get better metrics out of our system. We're also moving toward a best practice in 911 call handling, which will implement call handling protocols to be able to customize scripts for 911 call handling to provide better outcomes. And finally, our ongoing work. It's been a rough winter. 911 is a hard job, and change is always hard. I know because I've done every job in the center. For several years, 911 has been working along with our Union Labor Management Committee and our human resource partners to find ways to make 911 an even better place to work. Since we were under the status quo order for the past 6 months, we haven't been able to have this discussion. The initiative will help us move forward on all fronts. Now that we have the union representation issue resolved, we're getting back to business we couldn't get to before. That is the completion of what I had to present to you today. Thank you.
Thank you. Committee members, any questions? Councilmember Gordon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate the presentation and all the information, and I want to note that I I think that the work you've been doing and the plan you've been implementing thus far, the council's been very informed of and has been helping implement. So I just, you're kind of, I think, I just want to note that this is pretty much consistent with the policies and I think and directions you've been getting from the mayor and the city council. And I appreciate that. I have a couple questions that I wanted to ask. And I think I know the answer to the first one because you answered it. I believe that there are 2 vacancies and they're both in the dispatcher operator category. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so there's 66 right now, and the goal is to get to 68?
That is correct.
Okay, I appreciate that. And on the slide with the bell curve graph, the demand-based scheduling, I did have a question about how to read that slide. If one of the axes goes from 0 to 120, the vertical one, and does that just refer to calls, or does that also match up with the number of staff who are on at that time?
Thank you for the question. The left-hand vertical axis is the call volume. And so the blue line is summer call volume, and this is all based on historical data. The red line is winter call volume. The green line is staff scheduled, and for reasons of security, we don't publish those numbers, but we never staff fewer than 9 employees.
Okay, so we shouldn't interpret that as 42 just because it lines up with about 42. It's just something above 9?
Yes.
Okay.
And I can also privately talk to you about that if you need more detail.
I think that's going to be a real point of concern because I think that what we've had concerns about is what is the minimum? Is there a minimum standard? What should be the minimum? And then I guess I've just been trying to find out all these details in the last month or so and hearing a lot more about 911 than maybe we had been because of the change and what's been going on there and some of the coverage and some tragedies in the city. And so it's the part that I think some of us are most concerned about are those in the wee hours of the night or morning and how low do we actually go. I'm wondering, are we following the right metrics? I think this call volume makes a lot of sense, and that's definitely one thing you want to look at. But then do we also want to look at the outlying or some other metrics? What's the longest wait time? How many calls end up getting dropped because the callback doesn't happen ever? Or, I mean, I do know from personal experience, because my son did this when he was young, you can try calling 911 and hanging up, and they'll call you back to check on things, and that's great. And when he did that, I got a call back immediately. I didn't have a stopwatch, but it was very quick. But I think from what we're hearing, there might be some times when nobody gets a call back, or if there's a call back, they don't have one. So I guess I'm curious if we can't discuss it here, to discuss it at some time. What is the lowest that we get to? How do we settle on what that should be? And is that the right number? And then, and I noticed in Results Minneapolis, we don't necessarily track. One of the key indicators isn't the number of, I don't know if we should call them dropped calls or non-responsives, or maybe we should look at who waits more than 2 minutes. So what are the outliers? I think it's great that we're getting close to that 5 seconds and the 5.5 seconds. So that's great news. But then I think it would also be interesting to find out how long is the longest wait and how many people wait longer and what can we do about that, which might mean it's our fault. You know, and we always kind of pay attention to what we measure. So maybe we need to be measuring some other issues. I guess is just the point that I'll make, and maybe those ones aren't even the right ones. So I'm not sure what it is. I mean, I also think it's great that we're looking at how long it takes to get somebody dispatched there and those responses, and trying to improve those numbers too. I did have a question about that because it sounds like when we have an overflow of calls, we're going to have a plan for them to go somewhere, and I was unclear on where those would go. So if we're getting too many calls, we're going to have the capability to send those somewhere else.
The technology that we're implementing in early 2015, our new next generation 911 phone system, does have capability to implement what's called policy-based routing, and that means that anyone who is sharing that system will be able to develop rules for when calls may be routed away from one center and to another one. We're working with a regional group to develop strategies for that because we don't want to implement something that would end up not working. And it takes a very careful and thoughtful process to work through that. But we are actually at the table right now with a working group to determine what we can do with that capability.
I appreciate that. So I've been, another question, I'm wondering if you could, let's say that budget wasn't an issue. What was an issue was having the absolute best 911 call center there. And this answer won't be used against you or necessarily during the budget cycle or anything. But what do you think is the right number? I think we can make a good case for a lot of different things. Call rates have certainly gone up. But what do you think the right number is for the number of operators and dispatchers? If we might need one job title for the group now that they're all coming together, but is 68 the right number?
That's a great question, and I don't think there's a 911 director in the country that would turn down more staff if it were offered, and I'm certainly among that group. We did some professional staffing studies in 2012, and at that time the number that was recommended was 69, and so that was what our past several budget requests have reflected. We're up to 68 now, and we plan on hiring 6 more by the end of the summer to use that bell curve staffing that has been put in place now for departments to make better use of determining their own staffing levels. So we need to stay ahead of the game, and part of the reason that we've been working so hard to hire and train is that it takes a long time to train a 911 dispatcher. It takes about a year, and we don't want to rush people through. So we are trying to get ahead of the game, and with this new flexibility in staffing, I think we'll be able to get there.
And then I think it's important that we are able to keep our 911 dispatchers too. And I know we have some that have been here a very long time, and I think that's great, but I know turnover can be an issue. So I had one more kind of question, and then a comment. The question has to do again with the bell curve and looking at the volume of calls, because the point has been made that you get different kinds of calls at different times of the day, and that a lot of that volume during the rush hour, it might have to do with a lot of people saw the same traffic accident on the road coming home, whereas nobody's really going to be calling at 4 in the morning unless it is a pretty critical and serious thing. And I wonder if we could ever have a way of tracking that, maybe have a secondary bell curve or whatever, and if maybe you don't even rank the calls in their level of seriousness, but I suspect you do, because you have to dispatch the right people to the right emergency in the right situation, so they're getting prioritized. And if we could see the bell curve in kind of that priority, it might be interesting too, because I think that we might want to drive our staffing then to make sure we've got the coverage for when we have the potential to save the most lives or respond to the most critical, high priority incidents. And if they really are happening between midnight and 9 a.m., even though that's when our call load is lowest, we should take that into consideration. Is that something we've done yet, or we don't have a bell curve of it, I assume?
We don't have that. Our current reporting system presents us with some challenges in trying to get that type of metric. When we get our new reporting system, which comes with our new phone system, that's going to give us a lot more capability to do analysis. And it is definitely something that we're interested in finding out.
Excellent. And then my last comment just has to do with the uniqueness of the situation that I find myself in with 911 now. I think as a city council member, I have an interest in supporting management and supporting staff so that you can do a great job. But I also really appreciate that we have rank and file operators and dispatchers, I'm assuming because of the shirts, here representing it. And I also think that it's to the credit of the department that they have felt comfortable and able to, some of them, to come forward and share their concerns in a more public way. I think sometimes we get ourselves in trouble When somebody thinks anything going on in the department has to stay in the department, and, heaven help us if the council members find out about any problems. Well, it really helps us do our job if we can find about the problems, even drill down into them, have an honest, open conversation with everybody involved. And so we'll try to keep the balance, but I just want to thank you and everyone involved for helping us have that discussion here.
Thank you.
President Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Hunt, this is really helpful, and we don't have the report linked to our computer system. So I hope that, I think this would be helpful information to share with constituents who called us about some of these issues. But one of the most frequent things that I hear from my constituents is this situation of a critical emergency, shots fired, someone injured, and multiple people call. How will this new system, will that help us with that? So that calls would automatically, if we're overloaded, would they automatically go to another system, or is it manual, or how does that happen? And maybe it doesn't address that.
It does, sort of. And when I was talking about the new phone system being an IP-based computerized system, and that we have 5 initial partners that will be joining us in this initiative, and then we're at the table right now to develop rules for when overflow calls could leave one center and go to another, and how they would be handled if that occurred. That is the partial answer to that. The other feature that's available with the newer 911 systems is that you can do some geographic mapping so that you can see where calls are coming from, easier than we can today. We can do it today to a certain extent, but there will be more ability to identify that something big is happening in a certain area of town, and then work to triage those calls so that nothing falls through the cracks.
Okay. And that, Mr. Chair, just a curiosity, and I want to thank our 911 operators and dispatchers for being here today, and I can't imagine how hard of a job you have, and you do a great job. But I'm just curious, do people pick the shifts that they work? And I come from being a nurse, so I'm just curious, do you find it hard to fill some of the night shifts and evening shifts and that kind of thing, or what's the protocol for how people get onto the shift they want if they like working nights?
Well, by contract, shifts are bid by seniority.
Okay.
So they do an annual shift bid, which is conducted by seniority, and they bid for the available lines that they have the seniority to get.
Mm-hmm. Could someone pick a night shift all the time if that's what they wanted?
We have several people that do.
That works for them. Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Ms. Hunt, I have a few questions for you. So generally speaking, 90% of the calls are answered fairly quickly, and I'm wondering about the other 10%. That's even within the context of 10%, that's a substantial number of phone calls, about 40,000 phone calls. And what happens to those phone calls?
We don't have an accurate way to measure the actual lengths of time of those 40%. That's a limitation on our current reporting system. We hope that, we know that our new reporting system will have that capability. That standard was developed based on principles of telecommunications engineering to develop a standard grade of service. And a grade of service refers to the probability that an incoming call will be blocked or queued for an unacceptably long period of time. So the industry developed a standard that they felt was achievable, which was 90% of calls answered in 10 seconds or less. The vast majority of calls are answered very quickly after 10 seconds, but we don't have a good way of measuring that right now.
Okay. And when when somebody calls and hangs up, I mean, how do we measure that? And if they call again, I mean, those are two separate phone calls, is that correct?
If someone calls and hangs up before we answer, their call is held in an abandoned call queue. That abandoned call queue is designed so that we won't lose calls, even if someone hangs up, because we want to make sure that we respond to every call, whether it's an emergency or a pocket dial. And so then the system takes incoming calls with people who still have in-process calls and haven't hung up yet, and puts those in front of the abandoned calls. So if there's a flurry of activity, the active callers are always going to be put before those who hung up. Eventually, those calls that were hung up are presented to an operator for answer as soon as an operator becomes available.
Okay. And the 6 new folks that you might be hiring soon, I mean, would those folks be covering those wee hour shifts where sometimes we might have maybe one or no people staffed? Is that kind of the goal, or where were we on those 6 folks?
Yeah. We never have no people staffed, but it's always a minimum of 9 that are scheduled.
Okay.
Even in the wee hours of the night. But what we look at our schedule every month and determine the best placement for all of our people that are coming off training. And so I would expect once we are fully staffed and have filled our bell curve positions and everyone is trained and contributing, that overall curve would rise.
Okay. And, well, I wanted to thank you.
Thank you very much.
Committee members, anybody have any more questions? All right. If no one has any more questions, I would move to receive and file the report. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed? The motion carries. The next items on the public hearings, or the next items that are on the agenda are the public hearings for the Fire Chief and the Department of Civil Rights Director. The public hearing process will proceed as follows, and I'm going to read some of the ground rules for people. A is we have a sign-up sheet for speakers. If you wish to speak and have not signed up, please do so with the clerk over there. 2, we will begin with the mayor or her representative. 3, we will open up the hearing. Each speaker will be given 4 minutes to speak, and we will continue until all speakers are allowed the time to address the committee. When you come up, please state your name and address for the record, your organization if you are representing one, and whether you support or oppose a reappointment. Written comments are to be submitted to the clerk. After the public hearing is closed, the department head will be given 5 minutes to address the committee. Then after that, the committee members will have the opportunity to ask questions, and the department heads will have the opportunity to answer questions. So, committee members, do you all have any questions about today's public hearing process? Okay, if not, we will begin with the fire chief. And I don't see anyone from the mayor's office, and so we will just...
I'm right behind you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate it. I am very proud to put forward the name of John Friedel for reappointment for Fire Chief for the City of Minneapolis. I have had the chance to work with John in a number of capacities in the last 8 and 9 years, and know that as a person, he is a solid person. As a chief, he has had his eye on the budget. He has had his eye on staff and management, and he has had his eye on communication with council members when I was a council member, communication with the mayor's office, and communication with the public. That he is dedicated and devoted to fire safety and fire prevention and fire suppression. He is dedicated and devoted to the people who work in the fire department, and is unfailingly and unflaggingly willing to say what he thinks about what needs to happen in his department and in this city. Those are all things we want from a fire chief, and those are the things that we want from a manager. In addition to that, I have seen Chief Friedel as a human being. I have seen him, unfortunately, too many times lately in situations where he is in direct contact with the public who is experiencing some of the worst moments of their lives and moments we wouldn't wish on anyone. And his compassion in those moments, his skill with people in those moments, because it comes from the most genuine, thoughtful place possible, has been remarkable and notable to me every single time. I have been at the hospital with him when we have to speak with family members who just experienced devastating losses. And I wouldn't wish those moments on anyone, but if you have them, you want someone with John Friedel's heart and skill and compassion there in that room with you in those moments. So he's great for the fire department, he's great for the city, and he's also great for the people of Minneapolis, and I urge you to support his reappointment.
All right, we will open up the public hearing process, and I have names of folks who've signed up already, and if you want to sign up, again, feel free to go to the clerk. But first person on the list is Mark Lukoski.
Good afternoon, Chair, Mayor, other council members of this committee. My name is Mark Lukoski, and I'm a firefighter from Minneapolis, and I'm also president of Minneapolis Fire Local 82. I truly appreciate the opportunity to be up here, dealt with a number of members, and obviously hopefully get to know all the new members here in the panel and the rest of the council. I'm here really just to share my full support for Chief Friedel. I know he's spoken to you a number of times on his visions and some things that he thinks he needs. I think the city, unfortunately, has been through some tough economic times these last 10, 11 years and have had to make some tough decisions. But I think as we turn this corner, I think it's time to start looking towards restoring the service that we know we can bring back to the citizens and the visitors of Minneapolis. If you know me, you know I'm not short, but I'm keeping it short today. Just to echo what Barrett Lane says, as his system, which thankfully deals with a few tragic events, as the tornado, the bridge collapse, which myself and many members were there at the beginning through the whole event and the whole week of the tornado, where he agrees or he believes in his request that his system needs to be built to a capacity that can handle that level of support. Though their events, thank goodness, are few and far between, I think that analogy also applies, or that philosophy also applies to the fire department. We have what people individually agree are catastrophes in their life every single day. And I think this fire department needs to be rebuilt back to handle the capacity of those individuals' lives and when they're calling us. Like I said, in short, I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I hope you listen to the chief's vision, his requests, and some of the needs. We won't always agree on everything, but what we do, I believe, in our requests are noble. They're for the benefit of the citizens of Minneapolis, and they're for the benefit and the safety of your firefighters. So once again, thanks for allowing me to come here today. Thank you, Mayor, and that's it.
Well, thank you for keeping it brief. 2 minutes. Good.
Oh, okay. That's the first.
Next, Joe Madison. Thank you, Mark.
Joe Madison, Minneapolis resident, Corcoran neighborhood, 9th Ward. I'm secretary to Minneapolis Firefighters Local 82, 20-year veteran of Minneapolis Fire Department. Had an anniversary with Chief Penn yesterday, and 15 years as a captain. I'm speaking today, the mayor kind of took some of my thunder. I'm speaking today as a resident, not as a member of Local 82. We have gone through some tough times in the last 10 years, and we understand that. Leadership has, at times, not been the best. We believe right now that we have some good leadership. We went through some tragedies early this year, and John Friedel led us through those tragedies. And he led with the citizens, with the firefighters, and we need that type of leadership. But John has challenges coming up. Those tragedies that we have, some are preventable. Some of the things that we need to do as a fire department, we've gotten away from because of whatever reason. Fire education is the key. Getting into the community is the key. We have those capabilities. Support John in getting out there to the communities. 2 years ago, my friends and fellow firefighters spent Saturdays during the spring going out to the homes and installing nearly 4,000 smoke detectors. Still not enough. You know, we need to continue that on and on and on, and I believe John Friedel is the one to lead us to that point. So once again, I support John Friedel as a resident. Oh, no, one more thing. I know that John cares about his firefighters. 20 years ago, John was a battalion chief. I was a rookie, Station 6 over there by the convention center. There wasn't a shift that didn't go by where John came down there while I was studying and checked on me and helped me and drilled me, and that benefited me to this day. So I know that John cares about his firefighters, and we're proud to have him as our chief, and I hope you guys support him. Thank you very much.
Next is, the handwriting is a little bit off, so Carolyn Smolin? Okay, oh, wrong sheet, okay. Do we have anyone else who wants to speak on the fire chief? Anyone else? Anyone else? I've asked 3 times, so I will close the public hearing portion. Give the chief a chance. Chief Friedel.
Good afternoon. Chairman and committee members, it's a pleasure to be here today. I'm going to take a step back a little bit for a couple of years and then maybe walk forward just a little bit. 2 years ago, just prior to this time, I was teaching a command class for a group of actually police officers, and my cell phone rang, and it was at that time it was Mayor Ryback, and he had asked me if I wanted to come back and do a term as a fire chief. I had retired, and he asked if I wanted to come back, and I maybe paused for a thousandth of a second, maybe, and said yes. Knowing full well when I came back, I knew there was a department that had a few issues. You know, we were a little bit stagnant the way I looked at it. There was obviously the economic downturn that a lot of cities went through certainly had an impact on our department. But I think we came back, I knew there'd be challenges, I knew there'd be questions about me coming out of retirement to lead this department, but it's something I really wanted to do. I think that, one of the first things that I did coming back was I had to expand our department a little bit from 4 districts to 5 districts to align ourselves with the police department, but it did a couple things. I knew that I had a lot of individuals sitting on promotional exam lists who never had an opportunity to promote. By doing that, I not only I think built a little more of an effective command model on incident scenes, but allowed a little more internal upper promotional opportunity for some of our young folks. And so I was able to, in the last 2 years, we have promoted 54 individuals who are going to be some quality leadership going forward in this department. We had a problem with our rig replacement program. Working with our partners in the fleet division, I think I've finally got a sound plan that have our rig replacement, our fire truck replacement plan back on a solid 15-year plan. We've taken delivery of 11 new pumpers in our fleet. We've got 2 more scheduled for delivery next year. We'll be taking delivery of a new platform truck also August of this year. We've also just placed in committee working on speccing out a new hook and ladder truck that'll be hopefully delivered in 2015. We have expanded our community outreach. I think that is extremely important for us. We all know we faced a lot of tragedies in the last few months in Minneapolis. I think the community outreach and expanding our community public education, fire prevention programs is going to be key for us going forward. Strong prevention, along with education, is going to be very, very important for us to continue to expand upon. This year in June, I do plan on initiating a literature drop program throughout the city, where our firefighters will be dropping literature throughout the communities. And included in that literature will be an opportunity for homeowners who choose to request a free home fire inspection to have our fire crews go back into the fire stations to assist them in identifying potential fire hazards in their home. It's a service I think it's needed. I think it's time that we do that. We did that years ago, but I think it's something we need to get back to. It's a way for our firefighters to get into homes of some of the citizens of Minneapolis and take a proactive response to some of the tragedies that we faced this year. In terms of future, I know I still have some challenges with staffing. We have got a class that's going to be hired starting the 31st of March. I plan on graduating that class shortly after the 1st of July. In April of this year, probably 3 weeks from now, 4 weeks, about a month from now, I plan to identify a number of a second class to hire. We're going to start the process earlier. It's a challenging process to get people through all the process to get them hired into a cadet class. So with that, I think we're going to bring our staffing up to the budgetary level, and also maybe take it just a little bit above, because I know that we're going to have a lot of attrition this year, and I got to make sure we hedge against that attrition that's going to happen. So we are going to have the hiring challenges for the next few months. We are going to be hiring a number of firefighters. There's some challenges I think we can meet. I do think we have a plan in place to address that. I want to thank my staff for all of the work that they've done this year. I'm not easy, probably necessarily work for occasionally. I push hard. I have a lot of initiatives I want to pursue. They've done an excellent job. Both my civilian staff and my sworn staff was here today. I want to thank my firefighters for all the work they've done, especially the first 3 months of this year. It's been absolutely outstanding. They've answered the bell every time they've been called. They continue to do that. We'll work on getting the support that they need, working with committee and work with council. I know we'll give them the support that they need, and to maintain an effective fire department that I know we already have. We're a little bit small, but we're darn effective, and we'll work on getting that back where we need to be. We just got a little bit of work to do, and we will certainly do that. I'm very optimistic about the future. I thank the mayor for bringing my name forward. I really appreciate this opportunity. I look for your support. I am very proud to say that I'm the chief of this fire department, and I have a very optimistic outlook for the future for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Committee members, anybody have any questions? Councilmember Warsami.
Thank you, Chair Yang. I don't have a question. I just want to thank the chief and our firefighters for the stellar response that you had on the fire on the 1st of January in Cedar Riverside. And that was a horrible and horrific incident, but I think you saved lives on that day. And I'd like to thank you. And I'd like to thank Mayor Betsy Hodges for bringing your name forward as well. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
President Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I too appreciate the work. I had a fatal fire in my ward, and I think your words about fire safety, is something, and I appreciate the message that you sent out with the other chiefs. I just think it's so important that there are many things, I think Mr. Lukovsky said, that are preventable, and, that we need to get that word out. What are the hazards? And I think the idea of our firefighters going in and looking in some of these homes, I think is if they, if we determine that that's a good use of their time, I would support that, because I think it is really important for people, to try and mitigate the challenges. And, when you read about candles and cigarettes and all those sorts of things, and they're responsible for so many fires and so many lives lost, it's important to stress to people that there are things you can do to prevent that. And I too want to thank our firefighters. We have a fantastic fire department, dedicated people. They're firefighters, but they also are these first responders to people that call for all these medical emergencies. And, the job has changed in some ways because of that. But, what a remarkable service they provide for people in our city that is head and shoulders above the services that are provided by the communities that surround us. So thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for being willing to take this on. And thank you, Mayor, for recommending the chief.
Councilmember Palmisano.
Thank you, Chair Yang. Chief Frito, I just have to say that while I'm new around here, I'm very impressed with your leadership, with your communication skills, with your presence, both in the communities and also in council offices, and just seeing what we need and making sure we understand things. What I like best is that you still get excited about new initiatives. whether it's public education or invigorating the next generation of firefighters. I see that, and I see that in a very real way. I think a lot of people around here it would be easy to just see you as an expert, but I don't think that you see yourself that way. I know that you walk around as a continuous learner. And so I just wanted to appreciate your thoughtfulness. I'm glad that you accept our mayor's heartfelt nomination. Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Councilmember or President Johnson? No. So, Chief Friedel, these things tend to be love fest, but let me ask you a couple of tough questions. In your tenure as fire chief, I mean, what's been the biggest mistake that you've made on the job? And a corollary to that, what's your biggest regret that you could have maybe done better at?
As far as my biggest mistake, probably not throwing away one white shirt when I retired the first time I came back again. There's a story behind that, but my wife left one white shirt hanging in my closet, and I asked her, I hadn't retired, she said, why'd you do that? She goes, well, just in case. Well, that came true, you know. I think that there are many things that you look at. Right now, I don't know if I have any real regrets. You know, I think our staff and credit to labor and management and my staff for, trying to lean forward on some issues that we have that are so important to me and I think are important to us. So I think when, I'm working a little hard on some of the preventative issues. I think when I'm working that in public education, I want to spend a little more time on that. That's what I felt is important for us to look at some of the prevention issues, and of course my staffing. We need to grow a little depth in the department. I know that a lot of that's my responsibility to make sure that I put an effective plan together to be able to effectively do that, and I will do that. So staffing is a big issue for me moving forward. Probably not a good answer, but I am very optimistic where we sit right now, and I'm really looking forward to the future. So probably not a very good answer, probably the best one I gave you today.
Okay, and when you talk about staffing, can you clarify what you mean by that?
Well, I think, I'll be honest, right now we are budgeted for 406 firefighters. And within the next, probably the next 90 days, maybe a little more, maybe by June, I'm going to be down to, we're budgeted for 406, we're going to be down to 380 with attrition. That's how hard our attrition is hitting. I am that far down already. So we have to be very, very aggressive in our hiring, and our hiring process takes a long time. There's a process with all of the issues that new candidates have to go through to qualify to come on the job. So it takes a long time, and you have to guess a little bit. You have to look ahead and have a good, solid workforce plan to make some good hires. But I'm going to be very aggressive with that and get us up to that level and try to hedge again, to build that depth that we need to hedge against. I know we've got a lot of projected attrition over the next few years, so it's going to be a little bit of a challenge. But I think we have a good plan put together, and I plan to stay the course and stick with that plan and adjust if we need to.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from council members? All right, seeing none, I would move for the reappointment of John Friedel as the fire chief for the city of Minneapolis. I will ask the clerk to call the roll for this.
Councilmember Gordon? Aye. Reich absent. Johnson? Aye. Orsami? Palmisano?
Aye.
Chair Yang?
Aye.
There are 5 ayes, no nays.
Okay, the motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, with this next piece, I will turn over the chair to Councilmember Cam Gordon, who is the vice chair of this committee, to conduct the public hearing on the position of the Director of Department of Civil Rights.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. We already went through the rules when we started, so I don't think we need to read those again. So what I will do is I will open the public hearing, and I will call on Superintendent Bertania Johnson. A special request was made to go first because I believe she has an appointment. Oh, sorry, the mayor gets to make some initial comments. That could get us in trouble, Superintendent, if we don't let the mayor go first. Sorry about that. Madam Mayor.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much, and I appreciate the opportunity to publicly and formally put forward the name of Velma Corbil for reappointment for head of the Civil Rights Department. I don't know how much of a background I need to paint for people about the state of the Civil Rights Department in the years and almost decades before Ms. Corbil took over. I know that in my time on the City Council, we saw years of bad results. I mean, not to put too fine a point on it, that conversation has happened here many times in this room over time, that there were backlogs, significant backlogs in all the units at the Civil Rights Department. The community was clamoring for change and better results. I went out on a limb and made some proposals for how to get those better results that were not popular, consultation with the community about significant changes to the Civil Rights Department are crucial. Is a lesson I learned from that. But Ms. Corbil came in and she was charged with turning that around. And many people had come into the Civil Rights Department and been charged with turning that around and had not been able to do so successfully. And Ms. Corbil has been able to do so successfully. I think we will hear today from a lot of people who've seen a before and after in terms of her leadership in the Civil Rights Department, getting results for the community on issues that we all share and care about a great deal. She has managed through the challenges. She has managed to get results from a department, as I said, that had seen who had seen negative results for many, many years. And she's had to make a number of tough choices to make that happen. She's had to make a number of tough choices to make that real. And I admire and value the tough choices that she has had to make and she's been willing to make in the name of this larger vision that we share as a community. And I will say the feedback I get from the community, the feedback that I get from the legal community has been consistently positive in terms of the outcomes they've been seeing from the Civil Rights Department as Ms. Corbil has taken over as the head. But one of the biggest conversations we've been having as a city, especially over the last year, when we've had a long public conversation about city leadership and city values, one of the biggest conversations we've had is about equity and disparities between white people and people of color, disparities between low-income and medium and high-income people in the city of Minneapolis in particular. And that is a vision reducing and eliminating those differences among us are a vision I know that Ms. Corbil shares. And I know it's something she is eager and ready to work on and take to the next level. She has new leadership in the city. She has a new mayor, she has a new city council, and she has a city that's been primed for this conversation and this work over the course of the last year. And when I sat down with Ms. Corbil to talk about her reappointment, it was clear to me immediately how excited and eager she is to take the Civil Rights Department to the next level here and to help lead this work in the city enterprise and in the city as a whole. I asked all our charter department heads when I sat down with them to get back to me, in a pretty loose time frame about what they see as their role and what they can do regarding equity as well as growing the city, as well as running the city well. And within days, I had a memo on my desk from Ms. Corbil. I did not have to follow up even one time to hear what her ideas and her plan and her vision is for this work in the city. That's the kind of leadership we want in the city of Minneapolis. That's the kind of leadership we want in the Civil Rights Department. Ms. Corbil and I have not agreed on everything, and she has been willing to have those conversations with me, front stage, backstage, wherever they need to happen. She has been an advocate for the work, even in the places where she and I have disagreed. That kind of honesty, that kind of willingness to really speak up on behalf of what she believes to be true and what she thinks is right has led to some of those tough choices and those tough moments, but it's also what's led to the great results out of the department. And I want that kind of leadership as well. That's leadership as well, is that willingness to say, the tough truths and to make those tough choices with whomever is in the room. And so I ask that you as a city council and you as a committee approve her reappointment to Director of the Minneapolis Department of Civil Rights. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And I apologize that you had to wave to get my attention. So I think I already opened the public hearing, so we're already here. And Superintendent Johnson, why don't you go ahead?
Good afternoon. Bernadette Johnson, Dr. Bernadette Johnson, Superintendent, Minneapolis Public Schools, 1250 West Broadway. Good afternoon, Mayor Hodges, President Johnson, same name, Chair Yang, and Vice Chair Gordon. I'm here today, and I appreciate the opportunity to share my support of Velma Corbil as Minneapolis Civil Rights Director. Ms. Corbil has been a great supporter of the Minneapolis Public Schools and public education in general. She has worked with the school district on projects and created lasting opportunities for our students and our graduates. I'd like to share a few of those examples with you today of how she's had an impact on MMPS. Ms. Corbil was a member of the Oversight Committee. You may remember we built a new headquarters over north. It created a lot of noise from a lot of different people, and Ms. Corbil was willing to help us create an oversight committee and serve on that oversight committee to help us set and monitor goals for including women and minority-owned businesses in the development and construction of the Educational Services Center. Thanks to the results of her work of the committee, we exceeded our 25% minority hiring goals and more than doubled our minority subcontractors hiring goals. Over 20% of workers were minority and 6.5% of the workers were female. Over a quarter of the 80 different firms involved in the project were minority firms, and also 30% were women-owned. Under Ms. Velma Corbil's leadership, I'm torn between the informal Velma and, I'm sorry. I'm not used to being on this side of the podium. Well, what she's done is the program, she's created a program that partners with the Minneapolis Public Schools on what's called the Urban Scholars Program. And this program provides students with diverse racial and ethnic backgrounds with professional experiences focused on gaining essential leadership skills and creating career paths for positions in the future, and I hope positions that you and I will be able to take advantage of. Opportunities like this are extremely important for our students, and we at MPS are proud to hire 4 interns this summer who will work in our headquarters. My CEO and I will share one of these positions in our office. In her role as a Human Rights Commissioner, Ms. Corbil helped MPS develop the Office of Equity and Diversity. She helped us establish a proactive human rights perspective for this new office and provide advice on how the office should run effectively. Last but certainly not least, Ms. Corbil has joined the Achieve MPS Board, Minneapolis Board, where she has committed more of her time and leadership to the mission of serving Minneapolis children. As you can see, Ms. Corbil's interests and abilities are beneficial to the MPS educational community, and for that we are both thankful and blessed. I'd like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to support Ms. Corbil's nomination, and I believe she will continue in this. Believe she should continue in this leadership role in our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next person is Seema Desai. And you can correct my pronunciation if I had that wrong, and just give us your name and your address for the record.
Hello.
Welcome.
My address is 1311 East 39th Street, Minneapolis, 55407. And you did pronounce my name correctly. It's Seema Desai. And I am here to ask the committee to vote against the reappointment of Ms. Corbil. I was a City of Minneapolis employee for 2.5 years in the Minneapolis Department of Civil Rights as an investigator in the Complaint Investigation Division. And I would like to share with you some of my observations and to share with you some of the cost that this progress has costed the employees and the community. Under Ms. Corbil's leadership, the department has become very top-heavy. There are 5 managers for 15 employees. It has created a threatening environment. Employees are afraid to speak up. They are afraid to speak out against working conditions. Many of the employees are hourly employees. However, we were asked to work overtime in the evening and on night shifts and on the weekends for outreach activities. This work was done in violation of employment laws and the collective bargaining agreement. Employees were strongly encouraged not to speak out. We were told not to go to the union. We were told not to file grievances. We were told that if we do that, there is not going to be a future for us in the department, that Ms. Corbil doesn't like to work with the union. When I spoke out about these policies and practices, I was subjected to retaliation. I was ostracized and I was disciplined. It was really difficult for me because prior to this, I was a model employee. I was a leader in the department and I had a very good work performance. I became involved with the union because as an employment attorney in the Civil Rights Division, the irony struck me. How could the employees be so terrified to go to work? How could the employees be terrified to ask for what they are entitled to by federal, state laws and the collective bargaining agreement? We were also told not to speak to our council members. Even if we were City of Minneapolis residents, we were told not to come to these meetings, even if it was during our lunch hour. We were told not to speak out. I did this. I spoke to 2 council members and then now Mayor Hodges. And I spoke to these council members and I told them about the issues that the employees were facing. And I made these appointments during the springtime, and it was before I was subjected to retaliation. I told them that the city was violating employment laws and union laws. I told the council members that there was cronyism, that the managers work on inappropriate things during office hours, such as political campaigns. I told the council members that the employees were afraid to speak out. I took these steps again because I felt that it was my duty as a civil rights attorney. But it wasn't just my experiences that were problematic. After I left the city, I heard from many former employees. Some of them had serious health conditions, and they were told that they cannot make their medical appointments during the daytime because it could inconvenience the department. The employees were afraid to ask for rights that they were entitled to. One employee who identified as transgender had a conversation with Director Corbil where the director said, "Your identity doesn't match the way you look." This caused a lot of shame to this employee. Another employee asked for rights that she believed she was entitled to, and she was also subject to retaliation. I ask that you vote no. Many of you wrote your campaign on a
You need to finish quickly because your time is up.
on a progressive platform. I asked for you to vote no and to vote against this reappointment because the Civil Rights Department needs leadership that will move this department into the 21st century. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Martha Holton. Welcome.
Mr. Chair, Mayor, it's good to see you over there. I think in the past I've seen you over here. Congratulations.
Should say judge.
Council members.
Sorry about that.
I am, Judge Martha Holton Dimmick. I think the cat's out of the bag. And I'm here to support Velma Corbil. I'm not here in my capacity as a judge. I'm here in my capacity as a resident of the North Side, as a friend, and as a former city employee. I worked as the criminal deputy at the city attorney's office for 3.5 years with Susan Siegel, and I worked closely, not as closely as I would have liked to, with Velma Corbil. I had some issues that I was dealing with at the time with an organization outside of my office that I frequently consulted with Ms. Corbil about, and received some very good advice that I took to heart, and that was very helpful. I'm not used to being timed. I'm used to telling people how long they have. I'll try to stay within the time parameters. I find that Ms. Corbil has been an outstanding leader for the city. It's disheartening to hear that, and people do have their opinions, that people are allowed to bring hearsay before this council. If people have something to say against Ms. Corbil, I believe that those people should stand before you and not be represented by someone who is basically passing on hearsay comments. I don't think that's valid, and I don't think that's a good thing to do, a good practice to enter into. Ms. Corbil is an excellent, excellent person to lead this city and to deal with some of the issues that we deal with in terms of racial inequality, disparate impacts on people in education, in the courts, however you want to look at it. She's got the background, the experience. She was chosen. She came from the state as a leader in the state on human rights. She's got an excellent staff, outstanding members. I don't give out my address, but I live on the north side, and we deal with a lot of issues in terms of racial equality on the north side. And as a judge, I struggle daily with issues in many, many aspects of racial equality. I can't think of a better person to leave or to reappoint in this position as the Civil Rights Director as Velma Corbil. And so I fully support her. I encourage all of you to support her in this reappointment. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak before all of you. I appreciate listening to your comments, and Mayor, thank you very much for going forward and making this reappointment. I think that's a stellar act on your part. Chair, Mr. Chair, council members, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Judge. Next, Sarah Maxwell. Welcome.
Hello, council members, Mayor Hodges. My name is Sarah Maxwell. I'm the president of Ask Me Local 9, and I'm here to speak in opposition of the reappointment of Ms. Corbil. My members down there in civil rights have felt that they have been working in a very toxic environment for a long time. This department has been a problem child for me since I've been president of this union, which has been around 5 years. They exist in fear, keeping their heads down, hoping to stay under the radar and not be the next target for management. They're told not to talk to the union. They've been told in a meeting by Ms. Corbil that she has lots of connections in City Hall, inferring not to cross her. When people talk to me about what's going on down there, they get tears in their eyes. They're so upset, and they talk about how they bring this home and how it's affecting their relationship with their husbands or their wives, and how it's difficult at home because this environment has been so toxic for them. In spite of this environment down there, the department has improved their reputation throughout the city, and I think this is because of these people, these workers. They love this job. They care about what they do with this job, and keep working hard and fighting for the justice of the members or your citizens of the city, and they get treated pretty horribly. When all the information came out about Rocco Forte and how he was treating the workers, I heard a lot of I don't knows from council members. I didn't know that. I didn't know he treated you that way. I didn't know they were treated so poorly. I'm here in a public hearing telling you my members are being treated poorly. I want you to hear that. My members are being treated poorly. So when you make this vote, I want you to think about those workers down there that are fighting for the justice of your citizens, and maybe think a little more about them and what they're dealing with than the politics of this. Again, I'm here in opposition, and I want you to really think about when you make this vote, not just to rubber stamp it, but think about these workers down there. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Karen Bailey. I'm not sure if they were signing in for another issue, though, because I think they are 911 employees. The next two. Is there Arcola here? No. Then Wendy Adler Robinson.
Good afternoon, council members and Chair Yang. Appreciate the opportunity. My name is Wendy Adler Robinson. My address is 3749 Garfield Avenue South. I am in the 8th Ward. I'm here today to support the reappointment of Director Corbil to the Minneapolis Civil Rights Department. I am retired from the Minnesota Department of Human Rights after 26 years and ending my service there as both acting commissioner and deputy commissioner. I've had a working relationship with Ms. Corbil for 15 years, and currently I am a commissioner on the Minneapolis Civil Rights Commission. I met Ms. Corbil when she was appointed commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Human Rights. I had been working there for almost 20 years when she was appointed, and in the 8 years of her administration, the Human Rights Department flourished under her leadership. Her extraordinary management of the agency resulted in an elimination of the case backlog. Additionally, staff accountability was strengthened and institutionalized, and therefore the agency regained the respect and positive recognition from the Minnesota State Legislature. As a member of the Civil Rights Commission, I have seen firsthand that her excellent leadership and management skills have continued with the Civil Rights Department. The City of Minneapolis is fortunate to have Director Corbil as the head of its Civil Rights Department, and it is a pleasure for me today to be here in support of her reappointment. I thank you very much for the time.
Thank you very much. The next is Lenny Chisholm. Alini, maybe? Okay. I think we have some written comments, though, that have already been circulated with the committee from Mr. Chisholm. Is there a Don Belfield?
Mr. Chairman, council members, Madam Mayor, my name is Donald Belfield, and I'm a resident of the 8th Ward, Kingfield neighborhood, and I am a current member of the Police Conduct Review Panel and a former chair of the Civilian Police Review Authority. And I'm here today to support the reappointment of Director Velma Corbil. I have known Velma professionally for a little over 20 years. We worked together at the Metropolitan Council. She as Director of Diversity, me in the Human Resources Department. We worked closely together on staffing, also on minority women businesses, and her guidance and direction on that was much appreciated. I've known her to be an excellent manager, one who listens and has the knowledge, skills, and ability to get things done. I came here 4 years ago to let the council know of my support for Director Corbil, and I am proud to be here again today with that same support. To let you know that reappointing Director Corbil, that you are doing the right thing, but that you are also doing the residents of this city a tremendous service with her reappointment. So I thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Lee Lichtenreith.
Thank you, Chair Yang and Vice Chair Gordon, for letting me address your committee today. I don't have a lot to say, but I support the position of ASBE Local 9. I'm in solidarity with the unions when they don't want her to be reappointment. Neither do I. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is Teresa Pors here? Paus?
Thank you.
You can state your name and address for the record, and we'll get it right.
My name is Therese Pouts, and I reside in Minneapolis, 4712 Northrop Drive, and I am here to support the nomination of Ms. Corbil to the position of Director of the Civil Rights Department. I have known Ms. Corbil for over 15 years. I am an attorney by way of background. I've been a lawyer in the area of employment law for 24 years. I've known Ms. Corbil since she worked at the Metropolitan Council. My work is in the area of workplace investigations as a neutral third party. I do preventative remedial training, and I do facilitated dialogues. What I can tell you is that there is no one that I have worked with on a consistent basis who has more competency and character than Ms. Corbil. She is impeccable in her knowledge of civil rights, and she is committed to ensuring compliance with civil rights. She is the type of person with her vast knowledge and experience in civil rights and her uncompromising integrity and professionalism that I cannot imagine a person better suited to fulfill this next term. I would also tell you that in my work, there are oftentimes people who do not agree with difficult decisions that are often made, often in compliance with the law. There are often hard decisions that have to be made. And while a person may not always agree with Ms. Corbil's decisions, I can tell you that they are always well thought out. They are done in the best interests of the parties, in compliance with the law, and there is no one that I know who gives more of herself to ensuring compliance with civil rights and eliminating racial disparities. She gives 110% of herself to whatever she does. And I have had the privilege of serving with Ms. Corbil on the YWCA of Minneapolis Board of Directors. I have participated with her and helped lead the she was instrumental in bringing forward a conversation on eliminating racism that is sponsored by the YWCA of Minneapolis. I think she is a tremendous asset to the city of Minneapolis and to our broader community in the state of Minnesota. So I commend this nomination, and I highly support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, I would like to call Dave Bicking.
Thank you. I'm Dave Bicking of 4200 Cedar Avenue in Minneapolis. You received a letter from Communities United Against Police Brutality expressing our opposition to this appointment. I won't read that, but I'd like to express a few of my own personal comments. This city has a long history of racial disparities in education, employment, housing, and policing. The statistics don't lie. If you want to change those statistics and change the reality, this new council and mayor have to do something different. People can reasonably differ on the causes of these disparities and on the remedies, but we know more of the same is not going to achieve your goals. A vote to reappoint Velma Corbil is a vote for more of the same. The new mayor and council have been talking about racial equity, and many have campaigned on this issue. These equity initiatives must be incorporated in all the departments, but the Civil Rights Department is the most important. It must work well, and it must be effective. The Civil Rights Department, as it has been for a long time, is broken. It is dysfunctional, and in many of its aspects. It must be fixed, and that needs to start with a new department head. I am most familiar with the Police Accountability Division, which was the Civilian Review Authority when I spent 2 years on that body, and I have continued to monitor and attend the meetings of what we could see of the change to the new OPCR, and I have continued to attend and monitor that organization. The CRA, as always, needed improvements and strengthening. And there had been several past efforts to do that, which involved the community, a lengthy process, a public process, study of good models, that sort of thing. When this latest change was made, it was an unprecedented secrecy surrounding it. Many members of the council were not even aware that such a big change was in process until it was found out because it was leaked to the public. This was, Velma Corbil was the most directly involved in this, and that is not what we need to make further changes or supposedly improvements. The OPCR has turned out to be as we suspected at that time. You saw the headlines, 439 cases, no discipline. This is an embarrassment to the city. I also know there have been these indications of a hostile and abusive work environment. I knew Lauren Maker when she was still alive. She told me many things, and it's hearsay. She can't be here today. She told me many things that bear out the same stories you've just heard. And of course, she filed a lawsuit against the Civil Rights Department. That's on the record. This environment is very destructive, not just to the employees, but to the mission of the Civil Rights Department. You have a real responsibility. I'm glad somebody mentioned the case with Rocco Forte. That should never happen again, that years go by and people don't come forward. I appreciated Councilmember Gordon's comment about how important it is for employees to come forward and talk to the council when they're aware of problems. I hope that you will seek out employees, seek out the truth on this while you still can. It's much easier to deny the reappointment than it is to deal with a terrible mess in the middle of her next term. Please do not reappoint Velma Corbil. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Michael Harrelson.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, Mr. Chair, Madam President, council members, Madam Mayor. Thank you all. My name is Michael Harrelson. I live at 3800 Harriet Avenue. I'm an administrative law judge by day, and in my spare time, I chair the Minneapolis Commission on Civil Rights. It's an honor to be here today before you, and it's a pleasure to speak in support of the nomination of Velma Corbil as the Director of the Department of Civil Rights. Over the past 16 months, while I've been on the commission, I've had the opportunity to work with Director Corbil on several occasions, and I'd like to speak on her leadership qualities that I've observed over that time that make her an excellent choice as Director. The first two qualities is that she's professional and welcoming. She always makes it a point to come to our first commission meetings annually in January to welcome the new commission members, and this is not only a comfort to the new commissioners, but also a good way to start the year, and it's very exciting and encouraging. I've also experienced Director Corbil in various community meetings in Ward 8, and again, she's always very accommodating, and she always asks what she can do for the commission. I greatly appreciate that. Next, her leadership is practical, and I see that while I work with her staff directly. Assistant Director Tony Newborn, who is here today, always speaks very highly, not only of the director personally, but also of her opportunity to work within the Department of Civil Rights. She does see that as a good career fit for her. I hope she doesn't mind me speaking on her behalf. And I think that speaks well for Director Corbil and the staff that she has developed. I think they are hard workers and they do work tirelessly and give a lot of themselves, but I see that as an asset for the department. Tony and others on the staff are always, if they don't have the answer, they're always eager to find the answer, but I have found that there's not much that they don't know, and again, I think that is a reflection on the director and the expectations that she sets for the office, and her staff willing to meet those expectations and serve the city well. Her leadership is also meaningful. I'm working on a project currently with the commission in which we're trying to make contact with experts in the community on a certain issue. I had some trouble making contact with a couple of these individuals, and I just learned in our meeting on Monday that Director Corbil has had meetings that have touched on these issues, and those individuals are now willing to meet with me. So her leadership is meaningful. She opens doors, and I think that's good not only for the commission but for this the city as a whole. For these reasons and all the reasons said here today that support Director Corbil, I again support the nomination of Velma Corbil as Director of the Department of Civil Rights. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, I'd like to call Janet Nye.
Hi, my name is Janet Nye, and I live at 4200 Cedar Avenue in Minneapolis. Thank you for letting me speak today. I have no doubt that Ms. Corbil is efficient in her work style. as evidenced by 439 cases being dispatched expediently before the Office of Police Conduct Review. But no discipline out of 439 cases? That stretches credulity to the point of breaking. Is justice being served when the process is streamlined? And I want to deal with the facts here, as Mr. Bicking has mentioned. Statistically, our city is the most racist in this country in the areas of employment and incarceration for black people. So, you know, I don't think the statistics lie. However, you know, however nice and charming and smart people find Ms. Corbil, I think that these statistics tell a different story. And the emphasis in the MPD on coaching on police behavior is comparable to the effect of a mosquito biting an elephant. The problems we have with Minneapolis police are so much bigger than cultural problems and rudeness. You know, these are, when you think about the people who've been killed, the people who've been brutalized, the people who will live forever with disabilities, with emotional problems because of being brutalized by the police, we need to take care of this stuff. It's very serious. And the human cost of continuous abuse of the law by police, aside from being a financial burden on our city, is also causing a lot of misery. And the only this will not stop. This will continue to worsen if we don't fix it. So I am here today to oppose Ms. Corbil's reappointment. Thank you.
Thank you for coming in today, sharing your thoughts. Next on the list I have is Becky Roloff. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor, Madam President, Mr. Chair. My name is Becky Roloff. I serve as the President and Chief Executive Officer of the YWCA of Minneapolis, whose mission is the elimination of racism and the empowerment of women and girls. My work address is 1130 Nicollet Mall. I strongly support the reappointment of Velma Corbil to the position of Director of Minneapolis Department of Civil Rights, and I appreciate very much the opportunity to publicly and proudly share my thoughts. I've known Velma for 8 years. I met her when I accepted my current role. She served on the board of the YWCA for 6 years, including a full 2-year term as board chair, so I can speak also as someone who reported directly to her for 2 years. She chaired the largest conversation on race in the United States, which is the YWCA's annual It's Time to Talk experience. Velma is a very respected leader of her peers and a trusted advisor in whatever capacity she serves. Her judgment is fair and practical. She makes good decisions under pressure deadlines. Her resiliency and patience to continue the fight for racial equality in our community with compassion and with common sense is without equal. I would think you would know better than anyone here that it is not always easy to be a leader in a community. Someone is always prepared to criticize an action that you take, many times without having the information to make a judgment on your decision. And you also know that no one accomplishes anything alone. It takes the honest effort of many individuals with a joint sense of what is possible. Velma is a team player you can depend on to do what is right, even when it is hard, and to do it with the good of all in mind. Velma has served all of us well in this appointment. On behalf of the entire YWCA of Minneapolis organization, our entire board and staff, we look forward to and depend upon her continued leadership and strength. I think you are very fortunate to have someone of her stature and experience to be in this role. I believe the mayor is very fortunate to have someone of her stature on her team. And I think all of us who live and work in the city of Minneapolis are very, very lucky that not only Velma cares, but a council cares and a mayor cares, that we all work together to improve our city. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next is Eric Schultz.
Good afternoon, Council, Mayor. Thanks for letting me speak. My name is Eric Schultz. I live at 326 6th Avenue Southeast in Minneapolis. And I'm here as a representative of Communities United Against Police Brutality, and I'm actually going to read a letter that was penned and mailed to the Council by our President, Michelle Gross. Communities United Against Police Brutality was established in 2000 to provide a voice for people dealing with the effects of police brutality and to ensure accountability of the police to the community. We have closely followed the work of the Civil Rights Department as it relates to police oversight and discipline. Our experiences and observations compel us to oppose the reappointment of Velma Corbil to the position of Director of the Civil Rights Department. Ms. Corbil has played the lead role in dismantling the Civilian Review Authority and replacing it with the Office of Police Conduct Review. The CRA was never given the power or the resources to be sufficiently effective, but it did provide an opportunity for victims of police misconduct to complain to a civilian agency rather than relying on the police to police themselves. The CRA was formed over 20 years ago in response to community outrage over the deaths of an elderly black couple in a police raid. Community members put thousands of hours into its formation, operation, and several redesigns. Ms. Corbil has destroyed what the community demanded in a process that was secret and devoid of all public input. The proposal was 6 months along and nearly in its final form when the public and even many of the city council members were alerted to it by CUAPB after we were given a leaked document. Even the members of the CRA board had not been informed or consulted. When Ms. Corbil was forced to present the proposal at a public CRA board meeting, she refused to answer questions and left the room. She did say, however, that no substantial changes would be made regardless of public feedback. She held true to her word despite unanimous public opposition at 3 community meetings mandated by the City Council. The new OPCR plan was so bad that it was opposed in a Star Tribune editorial and in a letter from the National Association for the Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement. The NACOL letter said, quote, "As proposed, the model for Minneapolis will effectively eliminate independent civilian oversight," end quote. Sadly, the predictions have come true. The city has suffered the embarrassment of a front-page news article documenting zero discipline after 439 cases. The PCOC, the only group in the new agency to meet publicly, did not meet for an entire year and has yet to schedule its first community listening session. The PCOC was designed to have no access to actual case files, so their ability to audit investigations is meaningless. Our partners in advocacy and activism report similar dysfunction in the other divisions of the Civil Rights Department. If you wish to demonstrate your stated concerns for police accountability and racial equity, you must deny the reappointment of Velma Corbil. We are also concerned about reports of an abusive work environment within the Civil Rights Department. Indications have come from news reports, lawsuits filed against the department, staff turnover, and our own contacts with former employees. A recent whistleblower lawsuit has been documented in the city pages. The allegations point to a situation detrimental to city employees, serious potential financial liability to the city, and an inability to perform the important functions of the Civil Rights Department. It is the council's responsibility to oversee the department, and it must investigate these allegations further before voting on the reappointment of Velma Corbil. It is time for the city council to call for a search for a better director, one who will at long last clean up the Civil Rights Department, implement greater accountability for our police, and be a worthy ambassador for the city's commitment to equity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The next is Pam French. Welcome.
Mayor Hodges, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, Council President. It's been a while since I've been in front of you, so thank you for this opportunity. I am the former Director of Human Resources for the City of Minneapolis, and I reside in Eden Prairie. Currently, I am the Interim Deputy Superintendent for the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board. I'm here to speak in support of my colleague and my friend Velma Corbil in support of her reappointment. Velma and I met first when I was assisting then Mayor Rybeck in looking for a new Civil Rights Department director back in 2010. And I can tell you that when the recruiter came forward and brought Velma's name forward, we were very, very excited. Her history, her experience, and her knowledge was really second to none. In the weeks prior to her start date, while she was on vacation, we put together an onboarding team that was made up of human resources in Velma and some of her staff, and she worked several hours, every week to get to know the department, the organization, and I will tell you that her collaborative, smart, and I really want to emphasize smart, can-do approach to leadership was the beginning of a very productive relationship, not only between the Human Resources Department and Civil Rights, but between the Civil Rights Department and many throughout the city. And I would agree with what one of the former people said. It really is because of the workers of the Civil Rights Department that those relationships have improved so much, but it is because of Ms. Corbil's leadership that has happened. I can tell you, I led the investigation into Rocco Forte's department, and there is in no way, shape, or form anything that's happening in Ms. Corbil's department that even remotely resembles what happened in that department. And I want to emphasize that again. Through her leadership, when she walked in, and the mayor alluded to this strongly, she walked into a very beleaguered department for a variety of reasons. And there were a lot of people that are new here that may not know that history, but that history is important. And through her leadership, she was one who invited partnerships on a regular basis. And I think you see that here with all these people who are here to speak on her behalf. She opened doors with deliberate and respectful conversation. And she created an environment that was welcoming and encouraged people to engage in very difficult conversations about things that weren't so easy to talk about. She's a champion of the work of human rights, and there's no one who works as tirelessly as she does in her passion and ways to build partnerships and awareness around issues of equity, social justice, advancement, and those who are typically underserved. And I think were it not for Ms. Corbil and Mayor Hodges, issues around racial justice and social equity would not be taking place to the degree that they are in this organization. She's bold in her ability to talk about things. She opens doors and she engages others in conversations. My experience with her is not that she does not shut them. I've worked with her on the Urban Scholar Program, the backlog of civil rights cases, the Employment Equity Work Group, and then through connections she helped me make at the YWCA, where I served as a member of the Racial Justice Steering Committee. She gets things done. She doesn't just talk about them. And it's not that she does just anything to get things done. She does the right things. I cannot say enough about the respect and admiration I have for Ms. Corbil. The city of Minneapolis is very fortunate to have such a strong, passionate, and results-oriented woman leading this important department. I hope you reappoint her to this position. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Rudy Fatal or Vital.
Thank you much for the opportunity. I've never been in a city council meeting before, so I'm a little intimidated, but thank you, council, and the new mayor who didn't want to listen to me, apparently. I'm here because I had a very unfortunate incident with Civil Rights Department, and I've had very unfortunate incidents with Civil Rights Department for the last 20 years. So I'll give you a little history. I moved to Minneapolis in 1980. I moved to Minneapolis because I came to this city and I saw the beautiful parks and the beautiful system that was in place here, and I wanted to be part of it. I lived in Minneapolis for over 20 years. I don't live there now. I live in St. Michael, 2162 Langston Lane Northeast. But in my experience in the cities, I started working in the parks to some degree or another in 1994. In 2000, I took over as project manager for Aragoni Brothers Companies, who was a general contractor who renovated city parks. In 2005, I took over Aragoni Brothers Company and with my own company, Vital Hints Construction. And I've been renovating Minneapolis parks since then and continue to. I've got, we probably do $1 million worth of work a year in Minneapolis. One of the reasons I do so much work in Minneapolis, besides liking the city, is that when I bid in the city, I have no competition. I'm the only bidder on a lot of projects. I'm one of 2 or 3 bidders on a lot of other projects. And the reason that all the other contractors give me for not bidding in Minneapolis is one reason: Minneapolis civil rights. They will just not deal with those people. But I've been dealing with them for years. I've done my best. I've done very well at dealing with these people. All of a sudden last year comes along, 2 projects are bidding on the same day. Now, I'm not able to meet the goals that the civil rights has put out there because I'm a very small company and I deal with small subcontractors, and the big companies are, quite frankly, scooping up all the minority help. But anyway, to get to the point, I bid 2 projects on the same day. My partner and I spent 3 full weeks of putting together our good faith efforts, because if we qualified good faith efforts, we're awarded a contract. We're the low bidder. We were the low bidder on both projects. We put together packages of good faith efforts for both projects. They were virtually identical. I submitted them to 2 people in the Civil Rights Department, and both these people are very afraid of management, by the way. I didn't realize it was such a big problem, but I do see it firsthand. The questions were asked of us by the 2 different people from the 2 different projects. They were both answered identically. When one asked a question, I would submit the question and the answer to the other person. Final result, I'm awarded a contract. I'm told I had the best good faith efforts package they'd ever seen submitted. I was told on the other project that I was not awarded the contract because my good faith efforts were far substandard and would not qualify for me being awarded a contract to work in the city of Minneapolis. I've been trying to get a straight answer from Minneapolis Civil Rights since then until now, and I still don't have a straight answer of how that can happen. Now, as far as I'm concerned, we've got a head of the Civil Rights Department who's getting a lot of pats on the back and attaboys from the good old boy network right here, and the people in the trenches are coming up here and telling you that they're having problems with her. Well, I can tell you one thing right now. I have never dealt with her personally, but I have dealt with her employees for many years. And the employees in that department are afraid of management. They'll do whatever management tells them to, including telling me to lay off my white employees and hire minorities to satisfy their bosses. It's not right. You're a new city council members. You haven't been here very long. The reason you were elected is to make change and get some progress moving forward. By God, let's see you do it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your comments. Next is Pam Costain.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Chair Vang, Vice Chair Gordon, members of the committee. My name is Pam Costain. I reside at 3952 12th Avenue South in the Bancroft neighborhood of South Minneapolis. I'm here today to offer my heartfelt support for the continued appointment of Velma Corbil as the director of the Minneapolis Civil Rights Department. Ms. Corbil sits on the board of directors of Achieve Minneapolis, where I serve as the CEO. Achieve Minneapolis is a 501c3 organization that supports the Minneapolis Public Schools in its mission to ensure that all children who attend the Minneapolis Public Schools graduate career and college ready. We are also the organization that collaborates with the City of Minneapolis to run the Step Up Youth Employment Program. Ms. Corbil is finishing the 2nd year of a 3-year term on our board and has been a strong asset to our organization. Ms. Corbil is a proponent for the Step Up program, a strong proponent for the Step Up program, and a champion of the city's Urban Scholars program. She understands that employment disparities and civil rights are inextricably linked, and she has committed her department's resources to making that connection for the rest of our community. She brings a calm and measured voice to our board deliberations and a sense of fair play as we work to improve the lives of young people in our city and schools. She is accessible and a good listener. Finally, she is an important link between our organization and the city itself. I can only imagine that the characteristics that make her a good board member also make her a good director of the Civil Rights Department. I strongly encourage you to confirm her renomination for this position. Thank you for the opportunity to address you.
Thank you very much. Next is Leah Hargett. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Vice Chair, Mr. Chair, and committee members. My name is Leah Hargett. Address is 401 North Robert Street. I am the president and CEO of the Minnesota Black Chamber of Commerce. On behalf of the MBCC Board of Directors, I offer the following testimony in full support of the nomination to reappoint Velma Corbil to the position of Director of the City of Minneapolis Department of Civil Rights. The Minnesota Black Chamber of Commerce is committed to supporting the establishment, growth, and retention of Black-owned businesses in the state of Minnesota. And to that end, we are committed to working with every single person in Minnesota who will stand with us to create good jobs at good wages, encourage our entrepreneurs, support Black families, and embolden each other to be the best that we can be. The truth is, we have found a progressive leader who will consistently stand with us and champion the very issues of change we stand for. That person is Velma Corbil. During the past few years, we have heard President Obama call for the kind of change that yields an opportunity society where there emerges a level playing field for people to be able to live, work, and prosper no matter their background. In fact, just 4 months ago, many of you on this committee mounted successful election campaigns by calling for such change. We've heard the calls for change from our leaders and our constituents, and we submit to you that Velma Corbil is a big part of that change. Because Ms. Corbil took the helm, before Ms. Corbil took the helm of civil rights, it was common knowledge that the City of Minneapolis government and non-government entities were not in full compliance with hiring, contracting, reporting, monitoring, and enforcement mandates described in the contract compliance sections of the civil rights ordinances. Since Velma Corbil has been in her position, we have finally seen positive movement in the areas of hiring, contracting, reporting, monitoring, and enforcement. Are all the problems addressed? No, they aren't, but we are starting to see the change. It is Velma Corbil who is a big part of that change. Before Velma Corbil arrived at civil rights, it was common knowledge that consequences for failure of business and government entities to comply with the provisions of the civil rights ordinances were too lax and lenient, and even sometimes non-existent. Under the leadership of Velma Corbil and the Civil Rights Department, we have also started to see this change. We have started to see more meat put on the bones that what we should be effective and enforceable civil rights ordinances in Minneapolis. It is Velma Corbil who is the big part of that change. But most of all, the change that Velma Corbil represents is that in the city with one of the largest gaps in unemployment between Black people and white people in the nation, Velma Corbil has proven she is willing to suit up and show up to fight for what is right on a daily basis for so many residents, workers, and business owners who for too long have not had a seat at the wage earning or business building table in this city. It's Velma Corbil who has been the positive, progressive change Minnesota needs for all our people to move ahead. We urge every member of the panel to strongly support the reconfirmation of the Minneapolis City Civil Rights Director and very enthusiastic change agent, Ms. Velma Corbil. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for being here. Next, I have Frederick Block. Blockton. Welcome. Could state your name and address maybe again for the record.
My name is Frederick Blockton. My address is 7825 Washington Avenue, Minneapolis, Minnesota. And I follow the president of the Black Chamber. I'm on the board of the Black Chamber, and I'm also the president of UpNet Technologies. And what we do, which is important to this, what I'm about to say, is we write compliance software for government agencies to track minority participation. And today we work with the Minnesota Sports Facility Authority on the build of the Viking Stadium. And what I've had the opportunity to do is to work with Mr. Ms. Corbil through the process with the Minnesota Department of Human Rights and also all of the leaders at the Minnesota Sports Facility Authority. And one thing I do know about Ms. Corbil is that she will make sure that you follow the rules. And as a minority company in the Twin Cities here, we appreciate that because she supports one of the departments that deliver the message to people like myself and also the governance that make sure that we're engaged in contracts and other contract participations. And I'll tell you about an experience I had this morning. We were at a bidders conference with your city IT department. And one of the major components of your bid that you have on the street today is your minority participation. And your CIO led with that information from the Civil Rights Department. And I think it's because of Ms. Corbil that that information is on the street right now, and companies like myself have opportunities to partner. And one of the major things about the contract that I was thoroughly impressed with is that it was broken up so that companies like myself could have an opportunity to bid by myself without going under as a subcontractor or anything. And I think, again, it was a reason, and because of the Office of the Civil Rights Department, because they spoke about it, and they spoke about the opportunity for businesses like myself to have that opportunity because of that department. And so, again, I give my full support for Ms. Corbil as you take your vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Christy Ravalis-Palmer. Welcome.
Thank you very much. City Council members, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair. I'm here today. I'm Christy Rodelius-Palmer, and I work at the University of Minnesota Law School's Human Rights Center, and that address is 229 19th Avenue South, Minneapolis. As co-director, I've served also in the educational capacity and have had the honor and privilege of collaborating with Ms. Corbil on numerous projects over the last 14 years. I'm in complete support and would like to hope for her reappointment as director of the Department of Civil Rights. I've worked not only with her in her capacity as the director of the Minnesota Department of Human Rights, but also in her most recent capacities here with the city. I've known her since 2003 and found her to be a remarkable and dedicated human rights leader. Her devotion to rooting out discrimination that all people can enjoy an equal chance to succeed is exemplary. Ms. Corbil is a visionary and has the amazing gift of having her vision become a reality. Her leadership is inspirational. I want to describe a couple of examples to illustrate how I have seen her determination and initiatives become realities. One of the most significant collaborations we undertook was when she reached out right when she was a new commissioner for the state to Professor David Weisbrod and myself, because she decided that she had to not only work on responding to the violations of human rights, but also look at prevention strategies. And she plugged into the Google, she said, human rights education, and up kept coming up at the Human Rights Center at the university. So she invited us to lunch, and we all met and discussed what possibilities we could do. What we ended up doing was creating the first and actually only to date statewide human rights education curriculum, a pre-K-12 initiative. It's available both online and has served not only 1,500 educators plus throughout our state, but we have also reached a global audience and a national audience as well, being in more than 100 countries. She has now taken on an initiative with the Racial Equity Toolkit that I know will come to fruition. So this whole public education capacity building possibilities is reality. She knows how to get the job done. Her vision was to create a human rights education curriculum for schools in our state, and she far exceeded that. She was able to help us to expand the outreach to more than 20,000 hits per month on this one site with human rights education. Our collaboration on this successful project showed me Ms. Corbil's excellent foresight in this preventative approach to discrimination, by encouraging students to adopt inclusive attitudes early on in their lives and incorporating underrepresented perspectives into school curriculum. Ms. Corbil's vision was to instill a sense of justice and fairness in students that they would carry with them into adulthood. She's not only opened her doors to International Humphrey Fellows to serve here in the city to learn about the effectiveness, but those same fellows have brought their learnings back to Lithuania, Kenya, Turkey, and around the globe. I've served on numerous steering committees with her, and she has most recently done the One Minneapolis, a Call to Action conference on Human Rights Day, as well as the Civil Rights Act activities that will be forthcoming in the summer. In 1964, Nelson Mandela shared these words, "I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society in which all persons live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. It's an ideal which I hope to live for and to achieve." Ms. Corbil has put these words into practice. I hope that you will reappoint Ms. Corbil as the Director of Minneapolis Department of Civil Rights. Thank you.
Thank you. I think there's about 6 more names on here. I know everybody is given 4 minutes. If you're so inclined to shorten your comments, that's fine too. Next is Tim Baylor. And that wasn't intended particularly to you, Mr. Baylor, at all.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Madam President. My name is Tim Baylor. I reside at 2305 River Point Circle, Minneapolis. 3 years ago, Mayor Ryback appointed me to the Metropolitan Sports Facilities Commission until it was replaced by the newly formulated, newly formulated Sports Authority. It was there that I met Velma. We shared a mutual concern around the equity and inclusion goals for the stadium and the adjacent Ryan Development Project. Velma was instrumental in guiding and assisting policymakers, members of the Sport Authority, contractor, and concerned citizens like myself to achieve goals that were fair and equitable for minorities, women, and disadvantaged businesses. In addition to business goals, Velma also advocated for the workforce inclusion for women and minorities, which has yielded goals that exceed 30%. Velma worked tirelessly to draft documentation templates, collaborate with agency representatives, provide necessary data, statistics, information that supported her positions, and more importantly, demonstrated the interpersonal savvy to connect with others to get the job done. It is with confidence and sincerity that I support the reappointment of Velma Corbil. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there Carolyn Smallwood? Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. Good afternoon to all the council folks. I'm Carolyn Smallwood. I am the executive director of an organization called Way to Grow. Address is 125 West Broadway. Our organization believes that each child should have an equal opportunity to succeed in school and life. I'm here to support the appointment of Velma Corbil. I have known Velma Corbil for the last 3 years, and I was very, very excited about her appointment because of my previous experience with the Civil Rights Department here in the city of Minneapolis. I feel she has brought a higher level of visibility and substance to the Civil Rights Department. She has been very passionate and deliberate about the work on the behalf of the citizens of Minneapolis and the constituents. She also is a very strategic thinker and manager and is well respected in the community. Some of the things that she has accomplished has been, I'm very, very impressed with her, is that, number one, she created an equity department to look at the equity here in the city of Minneapolis. She also completed, within the first 90 days of her appointment, a disparity report to give us an overview primarily of what's going on here. The next piece is that she was very instrumental in creating, as you heard, the Urban Scholar Program. And most importantly, she is beginning to create a civil framework. This area of work that she is working in is very, very difficult. And as you know, the council, that the educational disparities, the employment disparities across the board is huge in the city of Minneapolis. I'm asking you to reappoint Velma Corbil. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Craig Taylor. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, distinguished members of the council. I appreciate the opportunity to share my support of Velma Corbil, for the Minneapolis Civil Rights Director. My name is Craig Taylor. I'm the Executive Director of the Office for Business and Community Economic Development in the Business and Technology Center at the University of Minnesota. Residence 2221 University Avenue Southeast. I have known Ms. Corbil for perhaps the better part of 15 years since she was in the role and capacity at the Minneapolis State Human Rights Department. Known her for a number of years. I have also had the distinct honor and pleasure of working with Ms. Corbil on a number of committees. One, the Oversight Committee that our superintendent spoke of earlier, as well as both of us have had the honor of being appointed by the Obama administration to serve on the State Advisory Committee to the U.S. Civil Rights Commission. I have always admired Director Corbil. She has always conducted herself with integrity and dignity in every capacity. I've appreciated that she's always made herself accessible in the community. She's always engaged and involved in community activities. More importantly, as my colleague Tim Baylor mentioned earlier, I also served on the the Vikings Stadium Authority Implementation Committee as well. And I was extremely impressed with the equity plan that Ms. Corbil developed. It was absolutely brilliant. I think it's a model that can be used across our country to drive sustainable development, economic development, particularly across communities of color, impacting our businesses. It was absolutely excellent. In fact, we will probably look at ways to replicate that model at the University of Minnesota. I also know that I've had the privilege of working in a consultant capacity for the Minneapolis Civil Rights Department with the previous administration. And I'm certainly very much aware of many of the challenges that that department was facing at that particular time, rather. And I might add, in response to that through Director Corbil's leadership, that department has drastically improved across its ability to impact our community, the stakeholders that are being served by that department. And so, with that being said, it's certainly, I again would like to reiterate my support for Director Corbil as the Minneapolis Director of the Civil Rights Department. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Kristen White.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, President Johnson, Mayor. My name is Kristen White, and I am an attorney in the Twin Cities community and a resident of 1425 LaSalle Avenue in Loring Park, Minneapolis. And I am here today to respectfully submit this statement to ask the committee to reconsider the nomination of Ms. Corbil as the director of the Minneapolis Department of Civil Rights. My professional experience includes civil rights work with the State Department, private practice, and now with the state of Minnesota. In 2013, I saw firsthand the harassment and lack of due diligence to promote civil rights as an employee of the Civil Rights Department. Today, I bring you several examples that eventually led to my dismissal from the division after I brought my concerns to Human Resources. As attorneys, we are bound by very strict rules of ethics to follow the law and follow normative rules of moral character. As an employee of the Civil Rights Department, I was required to ensure compliance with municipal and federal laws by working with federal, state, and local agencies to ensure that city taxpayer dollars were distributed efficiently and equitably. Specifically, I monitored over $400 million in projects in the Contract Compliance Division and was involved with highly publicized projects including Downtown East, Green Homes North, and the Neighborhood Stabilization Program. I was involved to ensure that these projects included career and business opportunities to women and people of color. Unfortunately, the Contract Compliance Division was underserved by its leadership, with limited staff, training, or support to do our jobs efficiently and effectively. We were unable to enter the community to promote small business programs or construction career education opportunities for our city's youth, and we were not given support or time to monitor projects either on site or to interview workers to ensure that discrimination was eliminated. Finally, when malfeasance was discovered, there was no support or political will to prevent these issues from wasting city dollars. An example of this was a $500,000 non-compliance issue I discovered on a project wherein a large company had the audacity to ask small women and minority-owned businesses to act as, quote, pass-throughs to receive this contract and then not award the funding to those small underutilized businesses. When this was discovered, I proceeded to investigate this issue and is drafting a determination to eventually debar this contractor, a penalty that unfortunately has not been used to date. But to date, however, nothing has happened on this case and no penalty has been issued to this non-compliant contractor who submitted false claims to the city. When these frustrations and failure to uphold the city and federal law came to my attention and were failed to be addressed by supervisor leadership, I met with Human Resources to discuss my options. I was concerned that my failure to uphold the law could result in losing my law license, and I was not prepared to put my professional career on the line for the motives of the department. Within 24 hours of this meeting with Human Resources, I was dismissed and given no reason for my release. Upon a data practices request, it is revealed that there is no information of my poor work ethic or any issues with my work. I sincerely ask this committee to investigate the harassment, retaliation, and abuse the employees of NDCR experience. The fact that the community does not trust the department is evidence alone that we owe more to our citizens and residents. We deserve a department that is trustworthy and that promotes the ideals that Hubert H. Humphrey envisioned when he created this ordinance in this organization. I thank you all for your time and for your work.
Thank you very much. And the last person, certainly not the least, though, who's signed up is Chuck Turchik. Oh, I'm sorry, there's another sign-up sheet.
Mr. Acting Chair, Mr. Chair, committee members, and Madam Mayor, I came here intending to make a comment, and then I decided not to. I hate making comments before council committees. And then I heard something that it led to me to make this comment. I'm neither speaking in support or in opposition to this reappointment of Director Corbil. I don't know enough about her whole work on in the Civil Rights Department to make an informed decision about that. But there is one concern I think that should weigh in your decision. This comment might be repetitive, but I think you will find that it is repetitive with a twist. To quote my favorite and only mayor, communicating with the community is crucial if you're going to make major changes in the Civil Rights Department. Communicating with the community is crucial if you're going to be making major changes in the Civil Rights Department. So I find it somewhat ironic that it was this very committee that Director Corbil brought her proposal to change the Civilian Review Authority into the Office of Police Conduct Review to. And there had been no public input on that proposal at that time. The proposal, when leaked, as you heard, had been brought to the Civilian Review Authority Board, but they were told that they could make comments, but no substantial changes would be made. So it was this committee, this very committee, that insisted that Director Corbil go to the community to make this major change in the Civil Rights Department. You required 2 community meetings, and they ended up having 3 community meetings. So I think it's more than ironic, I think, and I think that this is a concern that you should weigh in your decision. I don't think it would be determinative in any respect, and I'm neutral on the appointment, basically, but I think this is something you definitely should consider. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next is Lynn Littlejohn.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, Chair, council members. I am Lynn Littlejohn, reside at 700 Meadow Lane North. I am the Director of Community Affairs with Mortensen Construction, and I'm here in total support of the reappointment of Velma Corbil to the Director of Civil Rights Department. I won't take a lot of time. As you've heard, numerous folks speak about kind of the dysfunction of the Civil Rights Department over the years. We, Mortensen, have been a long-term partner with the City of Minneapolis. I've worked with numerous administrations and am here to wholeheartedly say that under the leadership of Velma Corbil and her administration, that department has become a resource that the business community looks to, has become a partner that we go to, as opposed to what it was previously, which was adversarial in an organization that you did not want to interact with. And I think that speaks volumes for Director Corbil, her department, her team, and then definitely in terms of creating that partnership with the business community. And I think she definitely is the person we want to see continue to run this department. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Matthew McLaury.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair Yang and the rest of the Public Safety Committee. I'm only going to take a short time because I know you all want to get out of here. My name is Matthew McLaury, and I live on 2529 Upton Avenue North. And I'm not speaking in opposition of nominating Velma Corbil, but I'm asking you, I'm adding a new twist. I think that this committee should really entertain the possibility of opening up potentially a national search for a civil rights director. And I bring that to you all's attention primarily for 2 different reasons. I think that Andre Rush is a very good friend of mine. He's actually a Minneapolis police officer. He speaks well of Chief Frito. And Chief Frito fights a lot of fights, and a lot of directors of a lot of departments fight in the city, fight on behalf, or they don't. And I think the civil rights director, quite honestly, in my humble opinion, is that they should be fighting on behalf of Minneapolis residents in a way that antagonizes people and brings data and allows data to shift in a really different way. And I want to point to 2 specific things. I don't want to point to hearsay, but I want to point to the perception and the actual data between the relationship between the Minneapolis police and North Minneapolis and Southwest Minneapolis. And then I also want to point on how much the dollar amount that has been spent on addressing ills of the Minneapolis police force. And then I also want to talk about the public dollars that go to private companies and other organizations in Minneapolis that aren't held accountable for hitting minority goals. And so I'm not speaking in opposition, but I am speaking to say that our civil rights director should definitely be held accountable, and that they should always be working to a point where it almost antagonizes respectfully the mayor and respectfully this committee on behalf of the citizens of Minneapolis. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else who's here who wishes to speak that didn't have the opportunity to sign in? Because I am prepared to close the public hearing at this time. If not, seeing no one, yes, please come forward. Welcome. You can state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. My name is Christine Smith. My address is 5248 Kimberly Road, Minnetonka, Minnesota. I honestly didn't prepare to speak on behalf of Ms. Corbil's nomination today. I thought we were talking about the civil rights mandate to work on the employment disparities. To be brief, My name is Christine Smith, and if you're familiar with some of the work the city of Minneapolis has done with racial disparities, I'm the founder of the Metro Talking Circle, which I had the honor and privilege of working with Cam Gordon to identify recommendations to the city of Minneapolis to reduce economic disparities. I sat on a committee with Velma Corbil for about 4 years working on this called the Equity and Employment Task Force. I'm not sure if she was a part of it that entire time, but at the time I was a frontline staff person. Everyone else was very higher level. I also was going through my own personal discrimination issue with my current employer, not my current employer, but my former employer. When I filed the initial discrimination complaint, I withdrew for my own personal reasons, and then I had retaliation against me. At the time, Michael Jordan, I believe, was the director, and the investigators found probable cause determination. Also, simultaneously, I'm on this task force with Velma Corbil at the time. Velma Corbil, when she came on, I went to a mediation hearing, and Michael Brown was also there, and they reversed my probable cause determination, and then sent me a letter later on stating the reasons why. I had a lawyer. They had appealed the probable cause, the reversal, and they reinstituted, I'm not sure of the language, the probable cause determination of findings of retaliation. And Velma Corbil and the department reversed that probable cause finding again. I went to the Civil Rights Commission and I told them about it, and they were shocked and they didn't understand why, and I had no idea what was going on. I'm not familiar with employment law, but I just felt like injustice happened and I didn't know who to go to. While working on this project and this work with Cam Gordon, I didn't want to share with him or other folks about this because I felt like it was personal and I didn't want to put myself at professional risk. But during that time, the One Minneapolis was getting started, and I was also doing a lot of community engagement work to try to incorporate African American and American Indian feedback in the community who were directly affected by the employment disparities. Velma Corbil didn't communicate with me at all about her One Minneapolis work, and simultaneously started her own initiative with the Department of Civil Rights without incorporating any of the feedback from the Metro Talking Circle or any of our involvement. I guess I don't want to speak on behalf of the nomination. I would just say, like the gentleman so eloquently put, ask the community. You know, there's a lot of representatives here that seem to have great positions, but the actual folks that you all represent, I would just ask that you go investigate and hear what they have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thanks for all your past work in developing our approach to solving the problem of the inequities. Anybody else here want to come up and speak? Okay, with that then I will close the public hearing. And I think according to our rules, now we give the opportunity for the director nominee to come up and speak. I believe 5 minutes is the guideline. I don't think we'll turn on the timer though, but we'll try to keep track of the time best we can. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor Hodges, Mr. Chair, Council President Johnson, committee members. For the record, my name is Velma Corbil, and I'm honored to have been nominated by Mayor Betsy Hodges to continue in my role as the Minneapolis Civil Rights Director. I'd like to thank my colleagues that have offered testimony in support of my nomination, and also say thank you to them for mentoring me and teaching me how to be a better technician, a better manager, and a better leader. I have been a manager in progressively responsible positions in this region since 1991. And immediately prior to my time here, I served as the Minnesota Human Rights Commissioner, and prior to that at the Metropolitan Council as its Director of Equal Opportunity and Diversity. I have built strong leadership teams in the organizations and departments I've led. I have such a strong leadership team now. These leaders have built strong, capable teams of employees who do wonderful work that we ask them to do because they know what matters. Leadership is not easy. As anyone here knows who has ever been a supervisor or a manager in the role, you will be called on to make unpopular personnel decisions. Over time, I have had to discipline employees. I have had to give employees less than positive feedback on their performance. I have had to deny vacations and requests for leaves of absence. I've had to delay and sometimes deny promotions. And I've had to terminate more than one person's employment. These occasions have not been fun moments in my life, nor are they the moments that define my career. I came to this job 3.5 years ago with a clear mandate from the City Council to make the city's Civil Rights Department an efficient, effective, strategic partner with other city departments, and to make it relevant again for residents and businesses in Minneapolis. I've done that to the best of my ability in the 3.5 years that I've been here, and I look forward to completing the work we've started. And I'd like to give you some examples of that. I would like to complete the work of the research and study group convened under my leadership in partnership with the former chair of this committee to learn why predatory offenders are more frequently located in vulnerable communities in Minneapolis and what can be done about it. I would like to complete the work we've started under my leadership of acquiring a single compliance solution to replace the outdated and inefficient technology that makes it almost impossible to perform contract compliance for the inclusion of women and minorities on city procurement opportunities. I would like to complete the work that was started under my leadership to create a more equitable procurement process that allows for greater access to contracts by women and minority firms. I would like to complete the work started under my leadership to set equity and inclusion requirements on large city projects like the Target Center renovation in a way that has never been done before, to allow goal setting on scopes of work where women and minority firms have the greatest opportunity for participation but have been left out. I would like to finish the work we've started with the council president to understand why subsidized housing distribution in the city has created racially concentrated areas of poverty in the city, and I want to know what can be done about it. I would like to continue the work we've started under my leadership in the Office of Police Conduct Review to learn if coaching for improved performance on complaints that in the past languished in the Civilian Review Authority backlog will create the accountability culture that the police chief envisions. I would like to continue and grow the Urban Scholars Program started under my leadership to give a diverse group of college students and college graduates work experience and eventually jobs in the city. I would like to continue the work that has been started under my leadership to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the 1964 Civil Rights Act sometime this summer. I would like to complete the work on the racial equity framework we've started, and which hopefully will be adopted by the City Council in April, and I look forward to the results it will create in the enterprise and in the community. Leadership in this city is not easy. Any of my colleagues will tell you that. But there's a committed, great group of leaderships on the dais, and there's a great group of people behind me who make it possible to do the things and accomplish the work that I've accomplished. And I look forward to doing it for the next 2 years. I want to say thank you again to Mayor Hodges for nominating me. I want to thank you to all of the people who provided testimony, and I want to thank the committee for its time.
Thank you very much. Now is an opportunity for committee members to ask questions or make comments. Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Corbil? Councilmember Yang?
Thank you. From some of the folks, it seems concerning that some of the things that are happening in your departments have raised some questions for us. And, I just want to start by asking, with regard to your departments, how many, since you've been the director of civil rights, how many employees have left, resigned, or been terminated?
I don't have the specific numbers on that, Mr. Chair, but I can certainly get those for you.
Okay, that'd be great. And something closer to you, with regards to your assistants, how many assistants have you had in the time that you've been there?
You mean the administrative assistants to me? Well, I think I'm on my fourth assistant at this time. Then you have to know that work in the Civil Rights Department is hard work. And I have recently embarked on a project with the Human Resources Department to really look at the job description for the executive assistant who is directly responsible to me, because I think that job has been described improperly, and that's the reason that we've had some of the turnover at the position where we've had that turnover. We've also had some turnover for some other reasons that I'm not at liberty to discuss publicly. But we are going to look at that job and make sure it's described appropriately. I've got a great permanent employee in the position now. She's doing fabulous and making me look good, which I really like.
Okay, and have you or your managers prohibited employees from speaking to council members?
Beg your pardon, would you repeat the question?
Yeah,
please?
have you or your managers prohibited employees from speaking to council members?
Mr. Chair and committee members, I haven't prohibited anybody from talking to anybody. One of the things that I do believe that if council members are asking for information from the department, what I've told my employees is that I want to know what's being asked for. And the reason that I've said that is if there are repeated questions or questions of a certain theme coming from council members, I'd like to be able to put together a response that's adequate for everybody on the city council. If it's a question that keeps coming up over and over again, perhaps it's an opportunity for me to sit down with a broader group of council members to be able to answer that. But I don't prohibit my employees from doing anything.
Okay, so, we heard a lot of employees talk about, or former employees talk about, issues within the department. And so it sounds like you'd be amenable to an investigation of your department in the workplace then. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair and committee members, some of these issues that these individuals have raised are probably already under investigation in the lawsuit that was mentioned by another employee. I don't have any problem with the Human Resources Department coming into the Civil Rights Department and turning over whatever rock they need to turn over. Because if it's a question of my leadership, I want that cleared up. Because this notion that there's some sort of toxic environment or something nefarious going on in the Civil Rights Department is ludicrous and frankly offensive. Because I would suggest that anybody on this dais pull an employee from the Civil Rights Department and ask them if they feel threatened and fearful and toxic, and they're not going to tell you that.
Okay, and if they do, what should we do?
Then I think that needs to be resolved, but I don't think you'll find that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Yang, are there any other questions?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
one quick point though to the council, to the committee chair's point. I would just like to point out, Mr. Yang, that you of anybody on the dais should have some firsthand knowledge about the environment in the Civil Rights Department because you worked there for a year.
I did, yes.
So I think what we'll do is comments or questions can come through me, and I don't think that you don't necessarily, if you want a council member, you can respond, and you can certainly do that, but you don't necessarily have to. Okay. So, Council President, do you have a comment or a question?
Mr. Chair. Question, but I just would like to make a comment if I could. And I would like to, have Ms. Corbil sit down. I don't need to ask any questions. If other folks have questions, maybe they can go ahead of me, but.
Why don't you go ahead, and Ms. Corbil, you can certainly sit down, and if there's any need, I'm sure you'll be here to answer further questions if something comes up. Go ahead, Council President.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. And, I thank everyone for being here today and expressing their opinions. And I know sometimes that's really hard for people to get up and talk about some of the issues that we've heard today. But as I listen to people talk, I realize how hard some of the jobs in this city and some of the leadership jobs in this city are, and how the people, the leaders who run this department, these departments, are subject to this public criticism. And I just think I want to thank them, the folks that do the service here, the chief, Ms. Corbil. This is a really hard place to work, so I thank you for working here. I am, as I listen to folks talk, I just want to remind folks about one thing. the civil rights director does not discipline police officers. The police chief does. The police chief does. And so let's get that off the table. You know, I remember, and I have served with 4 civil rights directors, and it's a hard department. People are angry. It's like the police department. People are angry. They feel they've been mistreated. You can't always make them happy. You can't always make things right. And so people will go away disappointed after their experiences with that department, with the police department and civil rights. And I think we try our best as a city to have a respectful place for people to air their concerns, to be treated fairly. And, you know, we have been well served by the people that have run our department in my time here, 16 years here. And I think people did the best jobs that they can. But it is a hard job. And I credit Ms. Corbil with, I remember sitting in committee here and having, it was actually Mr. Burns who came in and gave us a report. He isn't with us anymore. It's really too bad. But he came in and gave us a report about every project that was going on in the city of Minneapolis that we were monitoring. These are the goals for this project. Are they being met? Sometimes they were, sometimes they weren't. If they weren't, what we were doing about it. And I thought to myself, this was 4 years ago, I suppose. First time I've ever heard that. First time I've ever had that kind of a report from the Civil Rights Department. So I just know that people work really hard in this department. It is a challenging place. Director Corbil, you talked. Someone brought up the contract compliance. I'm sorry. What was it called? Our disparity study. Our disparity study. We had been promised that disparity study for years, and we finally got it done. Thank you for doing that. So I think that it's important to support the leadership that we have in our city. And I thank the people that are willing to take this on, and I respectfully would ask my colleagues to support Ms. Corbil in being willing to serve our city and continue her leadership in our Civil Rights Department. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm not sure if a respectful request is a motion, so.
It is.
Okay, I'll take that as a motion then. Is there any discussion on that motion? Well, I think that I will make a comment, or maybe a couple comments, because I just want to acknowledge and admit that this is a challenging decision. It seems like since the appointment came forward to executive committee, there's been more information. It's pretty exceptional, unusual that a representative from the bargaining unit would stand in front of us and share the kind of concerns like we heard. And so that makes it difficult. There's lots of different ways, I think, to reappoint and to decide how to reappoint somebody. And I'll admit, in a little way, I'm a little bit jealous of Mr. Churchick, who could just stand up there and say, I'm neutral and I'm staying neutral, and go back and sit down, because I have to make a decision up here and I have to weigh all these variables. So this isn't what sometimes happens, and I think the committee chair mentioned a love fest. I mean, sometimes it's just a complete love fest. I think what we heard today wasn't exactly that, right? So there's some stuff there. There was a lot of love, but there was some concerns and there's some issues, and that makes it a little harder on a council member to decide. I have seen different civil rights directors, and I've seen the department, and I remember the disparity study, and I remember some of the log jams, and I remember the lack of progress, and I want to acknowledge that progress has been made. I actually have, it's been really useful for me to be able to develop a partnership with the Civil Rights Department on the racial equity issues. When I first started raising those, hardly anyone seemed to notice it. When I did that years ago, and it wasn't kind of the same climate as it is now. And so that was important, and I acknowledge that, and I think that it was significant. And I think that we can build and we can grow with that. But I also really want us to figure out what do we want to do so next time. Let's say the motion carries and it goes forward and the reappointment happens. I want to start thinking about if there's improvements that we expect, what might those be? What do we want to see? I think some of them have already been acknowledged. I had the opportunity to sit down with the director and discuss some things, including the reformation of the Civilian Review Authority, or the destruction of it, or whatever you want to call it, which, as anybody who was here knows, I fought that. I was part of the group that said have some community meetings. And I think now there's an understanding that there has to be a better process when some decisions like that get made. There needs to be community engagement that happens. I think it might be one of the reasons why this racial equity toolkit's taking a long time to get back up to the council, because there is some engagement going on. But I also think there needs to be policymaker engagement, and people, you have to, and maybe interdepartment engagement. And I think that's kind of some understandings and some things that are happening. I think it also maybe is even the fault of the policymakers, the way things got set up when the commissioner came on. So I like to take responsibility for that, but I'm sure there was a sense of this department really needs a strong manager to manage it and get things done and get back on track. And so we may have done that. And it might be time now for us to think about, well, what could we do to make this more of an empowering department and take full advantage of the employees? I mean, I don't know how we can get to those kinds of changes, but I think hopefully there's an openness now to say we want to see how can we do that. So when we have young talent, they love it. I agree with the council president, it's a really hard place to work, but I have to say it's a great place to work too. And I know there's people in the city, because I'm one of them, who's just really excited about coming to work and figuring out what's the great project I can work on next. And of course, as a council member, we want every employee to feel that way when they're coming here and just to be able to shine and flourish. And so it gets discouraging, and it's really hard to hear that they can't. So maybe I don't have to go on much further, and maybe I'll have another opportunity because I see another council member in the queue here anyway. But I just think this is an important time to explain the decisions and maybe even explain some of the reservations we have about them, even if we are going to vote yes. Councilmember Yang.
Thank you, Councilmember Gordon, or Vice Chair. You know, I did work at the Civil Rights Department for a little over a year, and you know, a lot of the complaints that were brought up are not surprising to me. I will leave it at that, and I would just say that I oppose this motion. I just think that we should really know what goes on in that department before we make this decision. It's an important decision. It's a person that's going to lead our Civil Rights Department, and it's going to lead our racial equity agenda, or whatever that is, to the next level. And we need somebody who is really good at it. And you know, if we look at the department and there is no issue, I would have no problem with it. But I think at this point there are many questions, and I just urge my colleagues not to support this.
Are there any other comments? I will say that this, after this committee, will go to the full council for approval, and that will be about 10 days from now. So there will be time for council members and others to have some discussions and look at those issues as we go forward. Seeing no further comments, then I'm not sure if the rules said we'll do a roll call, but I know the chair was in favor of a roll call for the first appointment head. So why don't we do that again, if we could, Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Reich.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Warsame.
Aye.
Palmisano.
I'd like to abstain, please.
Yang.
Nay.
Gordon.
Aye.
There are 4 ayes, 1 nay, 1 abstention.
And I will now, maybe just for the adjournment, return the chair back to the chair.
Thank you. Seeing that there's no further business before this committee, we will adjourn. Thank you.